Hackers are starting to use voice AI. So they're taking voices of people of authority, like CEOs, and they would make a call and they would say, hey, this is Mr. Whoever. I'm on this business trip right now, but I need you to go into the account and, send this much money. I'll send the rest over email. So they're using AI voiceovers. So there's a sense of legitimacy. And this is, of course, a form of social engineering.
Eddy Almand, how you doing?
Doing great.
Did I say that right? Almand?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
That works.
All right, man. How you doing?
Doing great.
You're
Thanks
good.
for having me, Tracy.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for doing this. The topic of cybersecurity is so big in so many circles, and I had a conversation with Jonathan Rossi
Right.
and Chris Kazarian. They were both on the show before.
Oh, okay.
And both had really, unique perspectives. And, Chris had his fight with the DOJ to talk about.
Oh, wow.
So that was good. And but I wanted to get your perspective on cybersecurity. So you run a company called Almata,
Yes.
and but let's start, tell people who you are and how you got into cybersecurity. And did this start with your service in the military? And thank you, by the way, for your service.
I appreciate that. Yeah, Eddy Almand. I guess before the military, I should start, I was kind of, I grew up in Washington State. I was born in Japan. I'm half Japanese.
Okay.
Right. But I grew up in Washington State.
Okay.
And just like a normal student, I went on to college right after high school.
Okay.
And I just don't think I was ready for high school. I always feel like I was late to everything, right?
I get it.
Yeah, you get it?
Yeah.
I went to a private university and studied aerospace engineering. That was like my first thing. I did that for 4 years
Okay.
before I realized this is not for me.
And so what was the plan? Were you going to be an astronaut? Or you
Yeah,
design
so the
airplanes,
plan was I was going to go become an aerospace engineer and maybe become a pilot or, I was a pilot as a private pilot. I got my pilot's license when I was 17. And that kind of pushed me towards this aviation school.
So you were just saying you're late for everything, but you were a pilot at 17.
And I was pushed pretty hard by my parents. I guess it was a rebellion kind of thing when I went to college. But
Cool.
So I went in aerospace engineering because I already had this background of being a pilot, and I didn't really know what I wanted to be. But I was always good at math and somewhat into science, and I thought engineering was kind of the track that I was going to go down. But as I was going to school, it was, this thought of me sitting in front of a drafting table and designing bolts for a 747 for the rest of my life just didn't sit well with me. And then there's all these certifications you have to take, and I was feeling a little nervous about that. So I ended up not finishing after my 4th year, and I came back to my home state of Washington. And my father, who's retired military, sat me down and he was like, okay, if you're going to go to school, that's fine. But if you're not going to go to school, you're not going to sit here in our house and not have a job. So that led me to the military.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was probably one of the most pivotal points in my life, right? So
you were in the Army, right?
I went into the Army. I looked at all the different branches, and the Army just offered me the most, in way of compensation and everything after being in college. So went into the Army, took the, they have a test, the entry exam. It's called ASVAB.
ASVAB, yeah. Took that in high school, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Took that, did quite well on it. And so that pushed me into military intelligence. So that's what I did for the first part of my career, if you take that. Yeah.
Military intelligence, is there...
Oxymoron?
No, I wasn't going to say that. I wasn't even going there. I was like, is there stuff you can talk about, stuff you can't talk about? Or
Sure.
Okay. Is there anything you talk like how did that lead you into what you're doing now? Or was there anything that shocked you? Like, did you go in there and think okay, everything's cool, but oh my gosh, all these foreign bad actors are trying to hack our nuclear reactors or something? Or
Yeah, so the discipline that I was really involved in is called signals intelligence. It's more telecommunications kind of stuff, right? Radios. And so that kind of falls in line with cyber.
Okay.
It's really pre-cyber, right? It's like all your comms were telephones and radios, and so the training around that is quite interesting. I can't really go too deep into it,
That's
but
cool.
it's really trying to find attribution at the end of the day, right? Like, who are you listening to? Who are you trying to identify? Who's doing what? Where are they? All of those things kind of play into the tradecraft of the intelligence discipline.
I love that word, tradecraft.
Yeah,
It sounds so
they
cool.
drill it into you.
It's such a cool word.
So, but I guess prior to that, everybody goes through basic training, right?
Sure.
And that kind of humbled me. That kind of made me grow up
Okay.
quite fast.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, it was definitely what I needed at the right time in my life. You know, coming out of college, I was, obnoxious, annoying.
Who isn't?
Stuck in this adolescent, like this weird stage
Yeah,
of
yeah.
trying to figure out who I am, what my career is going
Sure.
to be, and everything. And then I get tossed into what we call a cattle truck with all your gear, and
Oh, man.
you're with a bunch of people you don't know, and they're spitting on
Figure
you
it
and
out.
yelling at
Yeah.
you, and yeah, making you do
Whoa.
a lot of push-ups and running. And it was kind of like, how do I get out of this? What did I get myself into? But it was really worth it, you know.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah. So then you go through all of that basic training, and then they send you to your training courses. So for us, it was like the SIGINT course, and then the language course. They send you out to Monterey, California, teach you a language, and so all of that takes time. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, on one hand, it was this kind of get down and dirty training, but on the other side, there's this very academic side of it, and it was very challenging
Okay.
and rewarding.
Okay. So
altogether.
when I think of, my father ran a construction company. He hired some Vietnam vets. And that's probably one reason. I had an uncle who was in Korea and a grandfather who was in the European theater in World War II. And always had a lot of respect for veterans. Even the guys who shot guns, the guys who didn't, the guys who, like, my grandpa never saw combat, but he served in Europe.
Right.
And always had a lot of respect for veterans. So, but and this may be like a lot of people, is like, you watch TV, you watch a movie, you think military, okay, the guy's infantry. We don't know, like, what the rest of the military does, right?
There's so much. Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot more,
Right.
right? Other than infantry or, like, combat, right? So the men and women who make everything else possible, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Both my father and my uncle were both Vietnam veterans. My uncle was Navy, my dad was Army, my grandfather was Marines. So yeah, it kind of was a family thing to a point. Yeah. So
Nice. Wow. Good. So, military service, you learn about pre-cybersecurity.
yeah, it's more intelligence
Okay.
in general, right?
Yeah.
And I actually ended up getting out right at the start of the 2003 Iraq War. So I got out around that time, and I was transitioning into civilian life. And, all I've known up until that point was college and military. So now it's trying to figure out how to take all that you've been trained on and how do you apply it to the commercial sector.
Okay.
So I ended up, this was another pivotal point, I think. My first job was with this tech startup. And they had this government contract with the intelligence community, and
Okay.
they built intelligence analysis software.
Okay.
So that was my first kind of dive into the commercial sector, which was quite interesting.
Yeah.
And I think, you being a lawyer
Yeah.
would probably identify with this. I don't have any background on the law stuff, but what we were doing was taking all this, what we call unstructured data,
Yeah.
right? Like, it could be reports, it could be news, and we were trying to find a way to structurize it, right? Like, how do you say Tracy and Eddie had a discussion on this date in this room out of like loads of data?
Yeah.
And how do you build that relationship from information that's
Right.
seemingly unrelated?
Well, we had a face-to-face conversation in January, which led to actually maybe a couple years before that, right?
Right. Yeah,
and then I hit you up on LinkedIn.
Yep.
And then WhatsApp. Mm-hmm. And when I do internal investigations, we don't just get emails. E-discovery started out as emails.
Right.
But then we realize, like, okay, companies use Teams. They use Skype for Business. They use, other things. But then they also use, and I forget what Jonathan called this, is they'll use a non-sanctioned software, right? Because this laptop, I got to get to the VPN to get into, my chat program. I'll just give me your WhatsApp, and they'll communicate with each other like that.
Right.
Well, then, there's these WhatsApp viruses that they can actually send you a message, and when you receive it, you're infected, right? So if I'm on my company phone and I get a WhatsApp message that I'm not supposed to be using WhatsApp on the company phone,
right?
But I get that message, and now they've taken over my phone, and I don't even know they've done it, but all the financial data, all the legal data, all the contracts, everything that goes through that phone is now open to them. So I've found through my friends in cybersecurity and also my law practice that people will use like unofficial channels. Some people say back channels, and some people will say like, I forget what they call it, but they'll basically use, unsanctioned software to say hi to their friends at work.
Sure.
Then they get, it doesn't have the robust security that a enterprise software has, and they get infected, and then everything's open to the hacker at that point. So
right. I mean, it just falls outside of the boundaries of control, right?
Yep.
So.
And so sorry, what I was trying to say is you're saying we're trying to structurize this data, and Tracy and Eddie had this conversation on this day.
Yeah.
But what led to that, right? There was line messages. There were WhatsApp. There was
yeah, exactly.
LinkedIn,
exactly.
right?
You can start.
How do you put all that together?
Yeah, you just start templating a timeline, right?
Okay.
So that's part of the analytical processes. I think the main thing when you look at that type of situation, there's like two constants. There's time and then there's place. So if you can take location and time and find the entities that were at that place, then you can kind of start to structure events and context and other things around that.
My favorite email is delete this after reading. And my second favorite one is call me.
We'll have a conversation.
Yeah. When you see that, this is a hint, and I never give legal advice, even though I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer, but not your lawyer. Anybody listen to this? But my favorite trick is to, after you see that, call me. Just get the phone records.
Right.
Okay, you can see they talked for 37 minutes.
That's your key term.
Or the other one is, I will call you on Monday. Well, then you go to their calendar and look at, okay, who did you talk to on Monday? Oh, there you go.
Man, you guys are doing some cool stuff.
We're doing some fun stuff.
Yeah.
I say
like
I feel
investigative.
I feel like a spy sometimes.
Yeah.
Because when and I've said this before, anybody who's heard this, I'm sorry, but I'll say it again, is when you onboard at a company, you sign all these documents, right? You're getting your health insurance, you're getting this workers' comp, your unemployment insurance paid up, you're getting all this stuff, and you sign all these papers, and you're so glad you got a job, and like, oh, I can tell my wife I got a job, and I can send my kids to college, and this is going to be great, and okay, I got all these new people to meet, and all this fun stuff, and wow, or if you're single, like, hey, who am I going to meet here, right?
Right.
Boy, the Christmas party's going to be great this year, And then you sign a paper it's like an acceptable use policy, right? And it says that any email or any communication you have through your company computer or phone is basically stored by the company. And people gloss over that. They kind of know it, right? They read, oh, but it's email. Like, I send an email to you, only you and I are seeing that, right?
Sure. Really?
Wrong. So those things can be archived and kept and pulled up 100 different ways, right?
Yep.
And people forget that.
Absolutely.
So they'll say stuff like, they will say something inappropriate. I'm not going to go into it, but they'll say something inappropriate through email and think, well, I just sent it to my friend. He's the only person seeing that, right? Or they'll say like, hey, antitrust case, we've decided not to bid on this project. We're going to let the competition have it. Okay, that's an antitrust violation. But they put it in an email. And
So it's
now
traceable.
they're going to jail.
Yes.
So, but people forget that. They sign a
Absolutely.
paper that says this is our acceptable use policy. Anything you run through this computer, your work phone, is all going to be stored, track trace database, and all that stuff. And by the way, like I said, this is not legal advice, but if you work for a company and you're under investigation by the FBI or the DOJ or any other law enforcement agency, you know what the company lawyer does? They protect the company, not you.
Absolutely.
You have to get your own damn lawyer.
Yeah, it's a crazy world we live in.
It is,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
So going back to this, you said you're, once again, I keep taking us on these
no, I
fun
love
sidetracks,
it.
but
I love it because I know there's a lot of parallelism.
yeah, it's interesting I think that's why I love cybersecurity so much, is that there's so many parallels to e-discovery.
Yeah, this was more intelligence related and analytical stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
But I think it all has a common thread
Mm.
to everything, right? But yeah, so that was a pivotal part. That startup eventually got bought out by a bigger defense contracting company.
Okay.
So went
Which
to go
is
work
known to happen, right? Yeah.
went to go work for one of the big guys,
Okay.
and that kind of gave me exposure to like project management and
Oh, yeah.
running international projects.
Which is a different skill than...
Which is like I was not good at it. Well, I was good. I was good at it.
Nobody's
it
good the
took
first
me-
time. Come on.
It took me all over the world, but yeah, it was not the fun stuff that
Yeah.
that you started off doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it.
Eventually, I got hired on by the government,
Okay.
so I became a civilian and worked in intelligence, doing other cool stuff related to like data and innovative technologies and
Okay.
that type of stuff. So
Nice.
what was really cool was, going from just being an intelligence specialist to kind of getting the technology exposure and understanding that landscape. And so, yeah, that was kind of it.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So then, Almata, how did
Yeah.
you get to...
So how
Am
did
I
we get
skipping a
there?
step, or how do we get there?
I haven't gotten there yet, I
Okay.
guess.
No, it's
so-
cool. I love the journey, actually. Like, I love the whole story.
Yeah,
That's what,
so I was married at the time,
okay.
and we have two small, young children at the time. They were really young, and I really wanted to expose them to growing up overseas. So we had this discussion. We said, let's try to go overseas. So my wife at the time, she was also U.S. government doing similar work,
Okay.
and she got a job in Bahrain in the Middle East. So we upped and moved our whole family to the Middle East. And
That's overseas.
yeah, so that led me to resign my post,
Okay.
and it was an opportunity. I had already had this vision of starting my own company. I was, government's great, but it works at its own pace, and I wanted to be a little bit more aggressive and
Okay.
trying to pursue stuff.
Yeah.
So I started a company out of Northern Virginia called Almata Global, and it's still there today doing consulting work. But that led me to the Middle East and got me more involved. I was doing cyber-related stuff, but it got me more involved with cyber stuff and
Okay.
industrial control systems. Of course, the Middle East is full of oil and gas, and that type of industry, finance, and such. So, and security is always a big factor there. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and especially within the oil and gas, it's really a bigger part of their. I mean, if you look at how much money is involved in that, it really kind of dives into national security.
Yeah.
So,
Well, when a company's pumping out billions of dollars out of the ground, I mean,
right.
and if somebody can get their hands on that, then like,
Yeah, it's quite crazy.
yeah,
But that exposure was really great, and having that type of experience was really great. And also doing at the same time cyber intelligence, which is more like diving into the dark web and finding out who's doing what and trying to, our clients were, they could be tech companies, they could be other types of clients, but they knew that they were being exploited in some way, and they wanted to find out how to stop that. So that was the other part of it.
okay,
Eventually, that brought me to Japan.
okay,
Yeah.
good. So you're still running the company out of Northern Virginia?
Yeah, that one's still there. But when I came to Japan, I opened up Almata here
Okay,
as a separate entity,
okay,
and I operate that here, based out of Tokyo.
got it. Okay. So I wrote down some questions, but I really like the free flow, the free form conversation. But silly question, what is Web3? I see that everywhere.
Yeah. So Web3 is basically like your blockchains, your
Okay.
smart contracts, and I think Web3 has been around for a while. But I think in recent times it's become more popular to say Web3 than to say blockchain or
Okay.
other things. But it really encompasses like the decentralized web.
Okay. So I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I do, and I don't offer legal or financial advice, but I do dabble in Bitcoin.
Okay.
And so, in fact, if you're interested, I can introduce you to people around Tokyo that are into, crypto, and we have crypto meetups where you can pay for your food and drinks in crypto.
I haven't been to
It's
one of
fun.
these meetups in a
Yeah.
while, but I know
It's
they've
fun,
been
yeah.
kind of pretty consistent. Around.
So, actually, I
Tokyo's
had
a big one for that.
Yeah, actually, I had a guy named V. Well, his initial, he goes by V. He was on the podcast
Oh, okay.
talking about Bitcoin Cash.
Okay. I think I know him.
Okay, all right, yeah. So, very interesting guy.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting guy talking about Bitcoin Cash, and there's been some recent developments in Bitcoin Cash.
Okay.
And I mean, I like it because the transactions are extremely fast,
Right.
and the fees are really super low. For other purposes, I like Bitcoin for whatever, but
Sure.
for like a really quick transaction to pay for dinner or something at a pub,
Yep.
I like Bitcoin Cash. It's kind of fun. Like I had an Aussie buddy visiting Tokyo, and we stopped by a place in Akasaka called Crack. It's
Oh, I know.
Irish pub.
The
It's
Irish
spelled-
pub. Yeah, they take it too.
CRAIC,
Yep,
but
yep.
it's pronounced Crack. And I had Eddy, the proprietor,
Uh-huh.
was on the podcast too.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
think I saw that one. Yeah.
Okay, so and so I take my Aussie buddy and his Singaporean, is it? And we're in Akasaka. I said, hey, let me buy you guys a drink. And I swagger in there. I say, Eddie, give us 3 drinks, and here's my phone. And I want to pay in Bitcoin Cash. And my buddy looks at me. He's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm paying in crypto. and here I was, the big boss, for 5 minutes,
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's a good community. I met a bunch of good people, made some good friends through the crypto community here in Tokyo.
Yeah. In fact, when I first came to Japan back in 2017, I was really big into crypto.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was like how I met people, was going
Okay.
to these meetups and everything.
Okay. Yeah,
What a
'cause-
great community
Yeah,
too.
the Bitcoin Cash meetup's been going on for a long time.
Right.
It's one of the biggest in maybe in the world, and they kept going through the whole
Pandemic, yeah.
thing. Yeah, the whole pandemic thing, and yeah, V's a cool dude.
Yeah.
I like V. Like I said, he was on the podcast.
I'm quite sure I've met him before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was on the podcast. We went to dinner afterward and talked for a while, and he's just a really cool dude. But so Web3, we can basically say kind of synonymous with blockchain.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more decentralized web.
Okay,
right?
Decentralized web.
And
Okay.
blockchain's included in
Okay.
how you operate on that platform
Okay.
or protocol rather is all of that encompasses Web3.
So and I know you're not like the cutting edge crypto guy or blockchain guy, but I have been trying to get somebody to explain smart contracts. And if you're up to it, do it. If not, no big deal. But like, what's a smart contract?
So smart contract sits on usually like the Ethereum blockchain
Okay.
or the NFT chain. Excuse me. And our involvement with smart contracts. So smart contracts are interesting because it allows you to transact on the chain using contractual coding, right?
Okay.
So if you can think of like NFTs are very popular these days, you can write a smart contract that allows you to mint an original artwork
Okay.
and shows the chain of custody
Okay.
of that artwork as it transfers hands and who's the owner and that sort of thing, right?
I've seen stuff about that, like where somebody can mint an NFT, and for example, if it gets sold again, they can get a residual or something, or they can get a piece. Or
Sure, right. Like so, all of that's written into the smart contract, and how you want to create that contract is really dependent on what that use is going to be for, and how you want to transact with it. I would say the problem with smart contracts is that once you release a contract, it becomes difficult to update because now people are using it and they're operating with that smart contract. So
I see.
yeah. So what we do at Almata is we do smart contract audits. So like if a company is developing smart contracts and they've built one out, we recently did one for a large conglomerate here in Japan. We review it and look at what vulnerabilities are left in the code. So we do code review and we run through it and test it and we say, okay, this is really well written, but here are the things that you want to fix before you push it out.
That makes sense because any contract is built on trust, but also the smart contract. If I say, okay, at this date or based on this action, this code will execute or this will happen.
Right.
But then I say later, like, okay, I release a song and it sells 1 million downloads, and I thought I was gonna sell nothing. So I just told whoever, like, I tell you, okay, if you put this on your website, I'll give you like, half the cost of the song, in perpetuity for the rest of our lives. So, but then it starts selling millions of copies, and I'm like, hey, wait a second. I'm leaving millions of dollars on the table.
Right.
I can't go back and say like, hey,
let's fix this.
Let's fix this, right? And of course you're going to say no.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a little bit different from that per se because the real problem with the fact that you can't, like, so if you take like a web application, for instance, and you find a vulnerability, you can go in and patch it, you can update it, you can go in and fix it. Maybe the stuff prior was still vulnerable, but you were still able to come back and fix those vulnerabilities after the fact.
See. Mine was a pretty bad analogy then.
Oh, well, not terrible, but the thing about Web3 is, and specific to smart contracts, is that once you start transacting, it's on the blockchain. So if there's issues with it, like those transactions are already set in stone. Right? So you have to kind of go back and it's best to just make sure it's right from the get-go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Always.
And get going.
So when you're doing a smart contract review, then you would look for those vulnerabilities and say, hey, this is going to be a problem down the road.
Right.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So we look at, so with all kinds of like audits and pen tests, penetration testing, we and this is such a arbitrary thing. It's not really like it's more qualitative rather than quantitative. But we look at the probability of
Okay.
something and then the impact it would have, and we
Okay.
determine the criticality of it. So we
Okay.
can say, you know, this vulnerability, the probability of somebody exploiting this vulnerability is high, and the fact that it would have a high impact if they were to do it
Okay.
means that this is a critical risk. And so
Uh,
that's kind of how we look at things. But yeah, we go through, we look at the vulnerabilities, and we provide those, we provide the example within the code, how to go back and fix it,
hmm.
and then we retest after they
Okay.
do the fixes.
So you said penetration testing.
Right.
That's a word I came across in my previous job,
Okay.
where we sold cloud services, or sorry, SaaS
Oh,
software
okay.
basically.
Yeah.
So, and then the customers would always ask, like, how often do you penetration testing, and can you give us a copy of your results and things like that.
Sure.
So what's a penetration test?
Yeah, I think so. A penetration test is basically where we have a team of certified white hackers, and they go in and they attempt to attack, whether it's an application or a cloud environment, as if they were an outside hacker.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So it's kind of like a war game scenario almost.
yeah, I
Or
mean,
am I overdoing it?
there are red teams and such, but
Okay.
yeah, but I think in Japan specifically, when I don't know in your line of work, did you guys do vulnerability scans, which are more
Okay.
automated scans to look for vulnerabilities,
I'm
right?
sure they did. Yeah, we had a
Yeah,
whole white paper on it that
yeah,
we were supposed to give out that explained all that. So
yeah. I sometimes get clients who don't understand the difference between an automated scan versus a manual penetration test.
okay.
So that's why I bring that up. But
Yeah.
yeah, penetration testing alludes to a more manual process.
Okay.
So we have testers and auditors that go in, and with authorization,
Yeah.
we hack into
Wow.
these systems. And there's different levels to that. We have what's called a white box, a black box, and a gray box, right?
Oh.
So a white box would be a client comes to us and says, test our system. Here's some logins and passwords, and here's the documentation. And we go in and we make sure those things are there's no vulnerabilities there. But our specialty is more in the black box, gray box area, and
Okay.
that's where we go in not knowing anything, and so we
Just
try to
going
find,
cold.
we try to find access into the system.
Uh,
We try to do some reconnaissance on the company,
okay.
and try to break the
Interesting.
system from that perspective. And
Okay.
what that gives you access to is, your exposure. So not only are we looking at, were we able to go into your system and break into it, but also how exposed are you as a company or your system on the internet for us to be able to find ways in.
Okay.
And then gray box, as you can probably imagine, is a mixture of the white box, black box. So
Okay.
we might have some access, but we're looking to exploit that inside and try to elevate the accounts to be able to reach sensitive data
Okay.
that would mimic like a hacker getting in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And interesting. So everybody knows what a hacker is, but is there a technical definition of what a hacker is? What's a hacker?
A person.
Just any person. Just
I mean, have you ever tried to take a shortcut?
absolutely. So, and the reason I ask is there's so many words. So when
Yeah.
when I heard penetration test, I'm like, yeah, I kind of know what that means. But then when you explain it, like I had not heard of black box, white box, gray box. But when
Yeah,
you
I think
explain
that's
it,
more
it makes
technical,
sense, right?
right?
But there's so many words we hear every day that a lot of people take for granted, and myself included. And so when I think of a hacker, okay, I think of somebody who, would try to put a worm on my computer, or would, you know, make a virus, or would try to get something off my phone, if I were dumb enough to keep my password for my banking on there. They would try to get that and then go to my bank and withdraw my money. That's what I think a hacker does. But there's so many other things, right? What,
I
what do
mean,
they What do they do? What are they after? Why do they do it?
yeah, I mean, I think everybody's motivations are different, right?
Okay.
It could be monetary,
Okay.
it could be political, and it could be,
Uh,
what are what are your motivations for taking a shortcut?
it's true. Well,
So yeah,
maybe if I'm being lazy, like I would, there are a lot of small streets here. I would cross on a red light. I wouldn't, but if I were to cross on a red light, it's because I'm in a hurry.
sure,
I don't want to
absolutely.
wait.
And I think you can apply that same analogy, right? I mean, if you can apply, we were talking about oil
Yeah.
earlier, but like, I've heard the term or the phrase, data is the new oil. And
Oh,
if
yeah.
you can think about that, I mean, look at how much
Oh,
data is out there. And if
Yeah.
data has a monetary value to it,
Uh,
right? And there's so much of it.
yeah. Well, I mean, and so many different types. Like there's financial data, there's health data.
Right.
I mean, just, being from the States, I mean, I did an internship, I did an internship and also the prosecutor's office in Detroit, where we found out that this is when identity theft became a field of prosecution.
Hmm.
Before it was actually the auto theft unit.
Interesting.
That's where they created this is specifically Detroit, but this is early 2000s where they didn't have a cyber crime unit.
Right.
And I think they kind of thought, like, we'll just let the FBI handle it. So. But it started out with falsifying records at the DMV.
Ah, interesting.
And then what would happen is I would go there and I'd say, okay, I know Eddy. I've got his address. I also have a buddy who's got this little laminator. I'm going to make myself a driver's license using Eddy's address and my picture. And my license is suspended, so I'm going to go get a license.
Right.
And I'm now Eddy.
I feel like
Right.
this is probably quite common in the youth, like
Yeah.
to
Oh,
make
yeah.
the 21-year-old driver's license so
Well,
they can get into
those
bars.
are
and
very
stuff.
difficult now with the holographic.
Right. But back in
know,
the day,
things.
it was
Back in the day, yeah.
they didn't have a system
it
for
was
that.
not that hard, and that's why, so many kids were able to get drunk through high school and college. But that identity theft and record falsification, changing VIN numbers, or actually taking a VIN number out of an auto salvage yard, going in there, getting the VIN number, stealing a car, and changing the VIN number in the stolen car. So when they run the VIN number, it doesn't come up stolen. That tied into identity theft.
Sure.
And so we had a bunch of people who were stealing somebody's identity, and they had hacked I can't say where, but they had hacked a database that had a bunch of people's financial data.
Hmm.
And names, addresses, social security numbers. So they'd hacked their place of work,
Right.
the HR department. And got to be careful here, but they got all this data. And with a name, address, phone number, and social security number, you can make a credit card.
Absolutely.
But I can also say, I don't live on Main Street anymore. I live on Elm Street now. So can you send my new credit card to that address, please?
Right.
Sure. Well, and in credit cards, if you've been on a college campus, they want to give out credit cards.
Exactly. It's so horrible.
So I say, yeah, my name is Eddy, and I don't live on Main Street. I live on Elm Street. I just moved last week, and it's been really hard, and I got laid off, and I just this and that, and the baby's sick, and can you just process this credit card for me? And people are so nice.
Right.
Oh, of course, Mr. Almand. I'll send
Right.
that right to you.
Yeah, this
then
is a big deal.
And then they get a
in the
credit
States.
card. Well, that's identity theft. So we had a brilliant attorney who had been with the IRS,
Hmm.
and he was absolutely brilliant, and he was able to crack these identity theft rings. And these people went from drugs to identity theft because it was much more lucrative.
Exactly.
and you don't get shot
Right.
as often. But and so they did this, and then they're stealing, financial information, making credit cards, and this is where I learned about what is called a controlled delivery. So I go on eBay with a stolen credit card, order a Gucci or Louis Vuitton bag
Right.
or a Rolex, get it sent to my home. Well, the police or the FBI, somebody, the authorities know that I'm using a stolen credit card, and it's not going to Eddie's house on Main Street. It's going to Tracy's house on, where am I? Elm Street.
Right.
Addressed to Eddie, right? and then they know from my IP address that I'm on, Elm Street.
Right.
And so they can put all this, structurize the data, put it all together, and say, okay, this guy is using a stolen credit card to buy a Gucci bag. We're going to call UPS or FedEx, and we're going to put an agent or an officer in a UPS uniform and go deliver that package. And as soon as Tracy signs for that package, slap the cuffs on him.
Right.
So that's how the identity theft unit started.
That's cool.
Was through the falsifying DMV records, stealing credit cards. Well, first they would just steal a credit card and go use it.
Right.
Then they're like, well, it's when you steal somebody's purse, they report it stolen, and then they call Citibank and MasterCard and say, hey, my card's been stolen. So what they do is this sneaky way of not letting somebody know I would steal their identity, make a credit card, and I can go use that brand new credit card at Target or Walmart or Best Buy.
Exactly.
Buy a big screen TV and a new computer and a printer and walk away, And then they don't know until it goes to collections. So 3-4 months later, somebody's getting this bill for this credit card. They're like, what? I don't have a credit card. I don't have a Best Buy card. I don't have a,
Right.
a MasterCard. But it's your name, your social security number, and, so that's how the identity theft unit got started. It's fascinating.
I don't think it's changed much.
No,
I mean, I
and-
think it's more technical now.
Yeah, and to say it's fascinating is what I mean is when you solve the puzzle, it's fascinating.
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
a thrill.
It is a thrill.
That's a thrill.
Yeah,
When
but
it happens to you, it's terrifying.
Yeah, and I think we've been. I've been hacked.
I was a victim of
finance
identity
stuff.
theft. I was living in Japan, and some clown somehow got a credit card in my name. And that's why I know so much about this. They went to Best Buy or Target and bought like 3 big screen TVs and laptops and AirPods and stuff like this. And I get the bill 6 months later. I'm like, I don't live at that address. I don't have a card from that bank. What's going on? And they say, oh, Mr. Green, no problem. Just go file a police report. I'm like, I'm in Japan.
Yeah.
How do I know the date? Because the officer's gonna ask me, what day did the crime occur? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
crazy.
and then the credit card company says, if you, we will also prosecute you if you file a false report. So you want to get it right? Like, well, was it? Okay, what day did I find out? Okay. But that's not the day it happened. It's very confusing and very frightening.
Right.
And you go to the police and even if you're the victim, going to the police department is scary. It's intimidating. And then you have to get everything right because the credit card company's told you file a false report, we're going to prosecute you. Like, wait a second, I'm the victim here.
Right.
It sucks. So I guess one of my questions was, what are the consequences of poor online hygiene? or no, that's not the right word. Is like poor security on a personal level. Somebody creates a credit card in your name and you're now possibly stuck with $10,000 of credit card debt. But
Yeah, on a personal level, now I've never had $10,000, but I've had a few $1,000s,
it
and I
sucks.
caught it, and I
Yeah.
called my bank, and They were like, "Oh yeah, we're going to run an investigation." It took 24 hours. They came back and they said, "Yeah, we realize you weren't in Italy. We realize you're in
That's
the
good to know.
United States, and so we're going to give you all your money back immediately,"
good.
which was great.
That-
That kind of system has evolved, I think, today, for better or for worse. I mean, for better on a personal level because innocent people are now protected,
Yeah.
but worse from the perspective of you're now authorizing people that do this. This idea that nobody's getting hurt from this except for the insurance companies, the banks, who you know, most people think banks are evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, there's similar stories about this all the time. You go even on like Amazon, for instance. You get these private sellers. You were talking about 3 big screen TVs. They probably went on Amazon and were
That's
selling
exactly
it
what they did.
in the box, brand new
Yeah.
TV. You know, $200 less than the competition.
Yep.
People are going to do their comparative research and say,
yeah.
"Wow, this TV, this is the one I've been looking for. It's
Yeah.
$200 cheaper."
Well, there's a YouTube short that keeps coming up in my feed for some reason. There's a guy who's flipping Nikes,
Yeah.
and he'll go to an outlet mall and scan the QR code and go to eBay and find out if there's a price difference, right? And so I can just imagine somebody gets the $1,000 TV, they put it on eBay for $800. That's gonna sell.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
a brand new TV.
Yeah. And that's cash money.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
now
that's how
you've
they
taken
launder it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
money laundering, right?
Yeah.
So
Or fencing.
fencing.
Reverse fencing, right?
Right. So on the on the cyber intelligence side of things, where we were doing investigative searches for tech companies that were being exploited, we were finding users who would scale the number of users on an app, and they would find an exploitable method for that particular app, and they would sell those services at half the cost in exchange for Bitcoin.
Oh my gosh. This comes up a lot too. As you know, I have a YouTube channel, and I follow a couple of guys who teach how to grow your audience, and they're very good. And one day he had a video, should I buy YouTube views and subscribers? Right. And is that what they're talking about? Like they're scaling up the number of subscribers or the number of users?
I mean, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
So it's basically saying that this happens a lot, actually, more than we think. So the bottom line was don't, because then YouTube will delete your account if they find out.
Right, it's illegal now, right?
It is. It's
It
very.
used to be kind of
against
a
the
common
rules,
thing
yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I've got a new channel and I want to show people that I've got clout, I wouldn't do this, but a very ambitious person who wants to look like they have a lot of followers,
Right.
would buy 1,000 followers or 1,000,000 Instagram followers, and then they go to some company and say, "Hey, I got 10 million followers. If I hold up your product on my Instagram, you're gonna get sales."
Sure.
They say, "Okay, we'll pay you 50 grand. We'll pay you 75 grand. We'll pay you 100 grand to hold our product up in one of your pictures, or maybe 3 pictures, right? And then you're a brand ambassador, and then they give you money, and you've got like 10 million followers, but only like 5 of them are real. Like, and that's a big scam. So yeah, the bottom line was don't buy views, because there are several markers where, like retention time, you got a
Right.
10-minute video and 1,000 people watched it for 5 seconds. Well, YouTube knows those
Absolutely.
are not real views,
Yeah.
right?
They've got it locked down.
Oh yeah, they're so smart.
Anytime you monetize something
Yes.
like this, right, there's always going to be people that are going to try and take
Yeah.
advantage, and people that
Yeah.
are going to try and game the system.
And YouTube's got some of those brilliant engineers and very smart people, and by the way, as far as I know, the biggest search engine, and that's why YouTube is a great. That's why YouTube has so much potential. So I can look at my analytics. I make videos about life in Japan. One of those was how to register a drone.
Oh wow, cool.
Yeah, and it's done very well. The law changed last year, and the big difference is most countries under 200 grams, you don't have to register the drone. In Japan, if it's less than 100 grams, you have to register.
Oh,
But
interesting.
a drone that's less than 100 grams is going to have like a camera that's about as good as a 1990s digital camera,
So
right?
they're saying
Like
basically,
8 megapixels, like no. And then there it gets more complicated if you want to deliver, if you want to fly at night, if you want to fly in the city, there's another license you got to get, blah 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 blah, right? But I can look at my analytics and find out where people found my video, and it will say Google search. They went to google.com and said, "How do I register a drone in Japan?" Well, Alphabet freaking owns YouTube and Google. So they search on Google, and Google says, "Hey, here's a video. How do I register my drone in Japan?" Well, in your search results, you're going to get that YouTube video.
right?
And so I can see how many views I get coming through Google search, and it is incredible. Incredible.
That's nice for you.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, and that's why a guy gave me sage advice. And he did not directly give me sage advice. A YouTube growth expert. There are a couple of them that I watch.
That's a cool title.
It is, yeah. Well, these people, they're not influencers, but they're like, they could be. They're really super smart, really super charismatic, but they're like, hey, you know what? Here's how I grew my channel to 10 million users or a million users. And here's how in 2023 you can grow your channel. Here's how you can get monetized in 2023, blah, 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 right? And so they teach you these things to how to grow your channel. And losing my train of thought. But
That's really cool. So do you have a drone?
No, that's the funny thing.
So how do you know all this though?
My
You
highest
researched it?
performing video is about registering drones in Japan, and I don't have a drone. But the reason I know, well, I wouldn't say so much, but the reason I know what I know is that when you shoot a video, you write a script. Because I don't know enough to just go off the cuff, right? If it's an area I knew really well, I would just press record and start talking, right? But it's something I knew nothing about, so I had to research it.
Okay.
And I had to research it in Japanese, which means I run into words I don't know, which means I got to look it up, right? And all that helps with retention in the brain. You're pondering this word. What is, okay, toroku means register. Okay.
Register, yeah.
Toroku, register. Okay. Drone no toroku seido. Okay. Registration system for drones. Okay. How do I do that? Oh, it's MLIT. What's that? Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Tourism, and Transportation. Oh, okay. And you say that 10 times and it's a tongue twister, so you mess it up. And you say it 15 times and 20 times. By the time you say it 20 times and record it, and then go back and edit it, and you listen to yourself say it 20 times to try to find the best take, it's so burned into your head. That's why they say if you want to master something, teach it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
The best I did for a very short time. I did jiu-jitsu here in Tokyo, and still and started breaking ribs. That's why I don't do it anymore. But
Oh, really?
I got injured so many times,
Oh, man.
and then I would recover. Like I'd take 2 months. Okay, my ribs are doing great. And I go back first class, land on my head.
Oh,
I felt like I got an inch shorter. I'm like, you know, okay, I want to take a week off because my neck hurts. You know, like, well, come to find out, these guys that are doing it for a living, like they're rolling for a living or fighting in the UFC, they train injured. I didn't know that, and I'm not going to do that because if you train injured, doesn't it make it worse, right?
Would
Like,
think.
you run on a broken foot, it's not good. No, these guys so I'm just not built like that.
Right.
But if you want to learn if you want to master something, teach it, right?
That's a really good point.
And I'm sure you've had people that you hired and onboarded and you brought them in and they go, okay, Eddie, boss, what do I do about this? And you sit down and talk to them. And as you're explaining it to them, you realize like, wow, I just taught somebody something and now I know it better. Does that ever happen to you?
I think it happens to all of us,
Right.
through life. The weird thing is I don't feel like I know enough to be able to teach anybody, right? But
You're just
You
humble.
you just start doing it, and
Yeah.
you teach them what you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then the growth from there is really
Yeah.
immeasurable. It's like they take it to another level, and then they start teaching you
Right.
stuff, and you're like, wow.
Right. What I love doing, and I haven't been in a training role very often, but what is really exciting is teaching somebody something and watching them run with it.
Hmm.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's like having children, right? Like you see a child pick up an iPad, right? And like, how do I turn it on? Okay, you hit that button. Okay, cool. And then the next time you see them, they're like, swiping and zooming in and changing apps and downloading stuff and whatever. Sorry. So I saw a little child walk up to I think it was Costco or Target, walked up to a TV, put his hand on the TV and swiped left. He was trying to change the channel.
My kids were doing that.
Right? I've heard this a lot actually. Kid, like the iPad generation, they
Right.
grow up, or the
Touch screens.
yeah.
And
they get a phone or their parents' iPad, whatever, and they're used to swiping around, and they go up to a TV and try to do that, like, and they look at their parents like, what? This thing's broken.
who made this?
Right? Yeah. Or you got to push the button. Oh, remember that scene in one of the Back to the Future movies? And I thought about this recently because I saw a DeLorean down the street the other day.
Cool. I haven't seen one of those.
And
in
I got
Japan.
a picture of it. Yeah, I'll try to remember to send it to you later. Yeah, crazy. I saw a DeLorean the other day, and I thought of Back to the Future. It reminded me of that scene in the movie where Marty goes to the future, and there's a game. I think it's like a Western game where you pull the pistol and you shoot the guy on the screen, right?
Okay.
And these kids are trying to figure out how to use it. It's like a retro game to them. And Marty says, "Oh, you got to pick up the controller and use it." And they're like, "You got to use your hands," right? And they were joking, and now it's not a joke anymore,
No, it's not.
right? I mean, I told somebody before, I was my dad's remote control. Right? He'd say, "Tracy, change the
Channel.
channel." Yeah,
You'd have to get up out of the sofa.
right. And then we got remote controls and color TV as I was growing up. I'm like, oh, this is so nice, man. But then you got to point it right at the TV, right? Now this thing I have here, I can be watching Amazon Prime or something, and I can be in the other side of the house and push a button and it just changes channel.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So much better. Of course, Japanese apartments are small. I could walk over and change, but there's no buttons on the front.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. How am I going to do that, right? You got to have a remote. So anyway, things have changed. And I'm getting off track again, but what are the biggest threats companies face?
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of threats out there, and we can run down from data breaches to like ransomware, operational disruptions. Like those are all real consequences of hacking. But I think before that, you just if you look, and we were just talking about this. I mean, how many devices do you own? Right.
Oh my gosh! Oh, the AirPods are a device now because
Right.
I can find it on Find My
Right.
in my Mac. So
But what I'm trying
Mac,
to
2 phones,
Yeah.
AirPods, iPad, Amazon Fire TV.
So if you
that's
think
just
an
me.
average person has like 5 devices on average,
At least, yeah.
and on each of those devices you're putting how much personal information,
Printer.
right?
Yeah.
Right? And you're multiplying that by, in Tokyo, what is there, like 38 million?
Yeah.
But you take like a financial organization and you look at all their clients,
Oh.
and they're hoarding all of this data on behalf of their clients in order to be able to provide a service that's convenient for them. But at the same time, they're collecting all of this data. You multiply that by the number of companies that are around the world. Yeah, and we always talk about, it's not if I'm going to get hacked, it's when am I going to get hacked. And there's this idea of, well, if you have a neighborhood of 3 houses and you live in a cul-de-sac and one house doesn't have any security system, the other house might have, lights on at the night, and then the other one has a dog, a fence, lights on at night, they might not be home, all kinds of stuff. If you're a burglar, which one are you going to target?
Oh yeah.
Right. So we think of security in those terms from a broader perspective, but
That makes sense.
and also, we spend so much money protecting everything, defending against everything, and
Yeah.
securing everything, but it only takes somebody that's trying to hack one successful attempt.
So, are there any ways that companies kind of ward off these? Like, what's the garlic to the vampire here? Like, is there any way that companies can ward people off just by their posturing, just by their, preparedness? Does it scare off potential hackers?
I don't know if it scares off potential hackers, but
Okay.
getting back to how do you ward off, right? I think for one thing that every company can do is security awareness, right? People are the weakest links to anything. And the bigger your company is, the larger number of employees you have.
The more people you have.
The more people you have, the more weakest links you have, right?
If it's a percentage, right?
Right, of course. But I think that's the most basic level security is awareness and training,
Okay.
right? We always talk about it. You probably spoke about it with Jonathan at
Yeah.
length, right? That's kind of his area of
We
expertise.
did, yeah. It's you got to educate the people.
Absolutely. I think more than technology, it's a people problem. We rely on technology, but I think we think of cybersecurity as a technology problem. It's not really a technology problem.
It's the firewall. It's the antivirus. It's
Those are all tools,
they're great to have. Yeah.
right? But it's a business problem. It's a people problem. I think first and foremost, I think technology helps us to secure some of these aspects, and we rely heavily on technology to operate our businesses, and they become critical to the business itself. You have to layer protection onto that, right? And I just don't think that there's enough education in that area. But at the same time, I don't think people are unaware that security is an issue. I think people are doing the best that they can to try and maximize security. I always talk about policy, people, and technology as like the three ways to protect. Of course, policy is always slow. It's slow to come about. But in Japan, they do a pretty good job of executing policy as soon as it comes out. It's not slow to implement. It's slow to come about, right?
Consensus is slow. The
Right.
execution is not. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I think in America and other areas, it's almost the opposite. It's kind of like, let's just throw some policy at it and then we'll
Yeah.
fix it along the way. So implementation becomes
Yeah.
a big issue. But here in Japan, I've seen implementation happen fairly rapidly. It's a quick thing.
Well, I see a lot of laying the groundwork.
Yeah,
People would know a policy change is coming, so they lay the groundwork. So on day one, switch on.
right.
You're good to go, right?
Right. And then when you look at people, and we have a lot of discussions about there's not enough skills for cybersecurity. And of course, that's true. I think that's going to be true for anywhere, really, even in the United States. I mean, we have more security professionals, obviously, in the United States. We've been doing it for a long time. Israel, great at security. Japan just hasn't really felt the need to have a security posture for a while. But I think that's changing. But in that, it takes about 5 to 10 years to develop people to a point of being able to apply skill.
Those 10,000 hours.
And I'm not saying that there's not security professionals in Japan. I'm just saying the amount of people is going to take time to develop.
And is there this thing where I thought about this one day and I thought, why is Japan still so insulated from the rest of the world in so many different ways? And I thought, well, because first of all, and this is not a criticism, the level of English is not that high. So if you try to import an idea into Japan that's been written in English, they're not going to completely grasp it. But there are no foreigners who have, very few foreigners who have a complete grasp of the Japanese language, who are going to be able to convince Japanese people to do something. So is language a barrier?
I think language is a barrier, but at the same time, I'm might have to disagree with you on some of those points. Not from experience, really, but I think a Japanese person telling another Japanese person, "Hey, you need to up your level of security," has some merit, right?
Okay.
Like that's what you're trying to imply.
Yeah.
But I also think, they realize that other nations are stronger at security, so they take those words.
The foreign expert.
Right, a foreign expert. Not on
Okay.
all things, but I think
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
area of security, they're
Okay.
kind of open to.
Yeah. I was
being
thinking more
advised on
social
that.
policy.
Right.
Yeah.
Social policy, they're very different, right?
Japan needs to change. I hear that from so many foreigners. Japan needs to change, and then
Yeah.
sometimes they don't want to.
I don't think that. Yeah. I mean, I don't want Japan to change. Really.
Neither do I.
I
Neither do
want
I.
I want it to stay this
I should
way
say,
forever.
Neither do I. I love Japan.
But I also believe in prescribe to the thought that strong security allows us to live a fairly free and safe environment, right?
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think all of those things kind of play into it. But yeah.
Okay. So maybe the Japanese language is not that much of a barrier. I mean, if you look at it like ones and zeros, right? If I just need to hack maybe run an exploit with a macro or something, I don't need to speak Japanese to do that, right?
Right.
Maybe send somebody an Excel sheet with a macro exploit.
Sure.
And it don't have to be able to read Japanese to do that, right?
I think there's this false sense of security because of the language barrier, right? But on the back end, the software is written in code that's understood by everybody, and when you're talking about Excel, the data itself might be in a foreign language, but
Sure.
If you're trying to exploit, if you're trying to breach the data by using a macro exploit on Excel, the Excel, whether it's in Japanese or English, it operates the same way.
Well, if you go into the script editor, it's just going to be a bunch of gobbledygook, right? So, and if you can understand that gobbledygook,
Right.
then you can create an exploit and
But
go for it.
I mean, I'll keep coming back to this, but I think that's where, cybersecurity and security in general is not a technology problem. It's a people problem, The people making decisions for the business are the CEOs and, the CTOs or the CFOs or the managers. They might not have the technical background to understand, but I think it's incumbent on security professionals to be able to translate it into business logic for them to be able to understand. We take a look at cybersecurity gets a bad rap from a budgetary standpoint because it's so hard to quantify how much you're getting back
car
in
insurance.
return on investment. But if you can quantify it in a way that says you're going to lose revenue if this occurs, now the risk becomes real. So I think it's not anybody's fault, but I think as a security professional, it's incumbent upon us to be able to translate it into a speak that can be understood.
Yeah, I think so. I think in anything, if you have an area of expertise, if you're a doctor and you tell somebody they have something that has a really long medical name, they're going to look at you with a blank stare. If you say your heart's not working right, everybody knows what that means. Right?
It's like, give me the bottom line.
Yeah. Or just anything like that, like your heart's not working,
Yeah.
You need more vitamin D, whatever it is, put it into plain, understandable language. I think that's why I think people like science communicators like Neil deGrasse Tyson are so vital to the world, because he can take something that's so incredibly complicated and make it so a dummy like me can get it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and I struggle with this, right? Because I get told all the time, especially coming onto this podcast, people are like, "Don't go too technical. Don't go too." And I don't think it's.
Oh
really
no, I have nerds
technical.
who listen to this, and I love them. Yeah.
But I struggle to try and find a balance of being able to explain my point in a way that people can understand it, but at the same time, it's not such a simple explanation. It's very complex on the back end. And we're coming out with a new product that's a vulnerability management product, which, if you think about layering security, one of the aside from doing security training and awareness, is patching your systems, making sure things are up to date. If you've got a large company and you've got, all these different systems, it's like
Yeah.
it becomes a nightmare to try and keep
Oh,
everything
yeah.
updated.
Well, and then a security patch always comes like 5 minutes before a presentation.
Right. And it breaks something.
Yeah.
Right? Something gets broken.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring it up, it was a shameless plug, but the reason
No,
why I
bring it
bring
up,
it
yeah.
up was because we were talking about Japan and cultural,
Yeah.
and I was just thinking about this. Because if you tell an IT guy to go patch something and it ends up breaking something, who's going to take the blame for it? And is it that guy? And, you've been in Japan for quite a while.
Yep.
Culturally,
Yep.
you don't want to stick out,
No.
right?
No.
You don't want to
Well,
be that guy.
Everything is about
Right. So,
taking responsibility, and
yeah.
this is why, by the way, and I don't mean to discourage people, but this is why sales can move so slowly in Japan. Nobody wants to take responsibility. Nobody wants to be the guy who says, yeah, I signed for that.
Right.
Because if we don't get our value for the money, like
Who's taking the blame?
Tracy just wasted $25,000 of the company's money.
Right.
Okay, performance review is coming up, and we're hiring a new regional director. You're not up for that now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right, exactly. And so culturally, they have this mindset where I don't want to stick out. If I do something that, even if it's my job and it breaks something else and I take the blame, that's going to look bad upon me.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if there's one thing that we need to change in this environment is this idea that I don't want to take the blame for it. Because if you did the right thing and you were trying to protect something, that should be awarded.
Yeah.
Or rewarded rather.
Yeah.
As opposed
I understood
to
what you meant.
sorry. Yeah, but I don't think that kind of exists yet.
Not yet, yeah.
And I think that's one of the bigger not problems, but one of the areas that should probably
it's a
change
hurdle.
for
Yeah,
the
it's a
good.
hurdle. So, okay. So, another thing that happens a lot, and when I was in SaaS sales, this happened more times than I care to admit, but in Japanese they say Jinji Ido, which means the shuffle. That yearly shuffle.
Right.
And what I mean is, okay, let me go back. Jinji Ido is the personnel shuffle. And it's kind of hard to understand if you're coming from a Western point of view, because if I get out of school with a degree in accounting and I go to the accounting department or the finance department, that's where I stay. I'm a finance person. And if I switch jobs, I get a job in the finance department of my new company. Well, in a Japanese corporation, traditionally, you join the company entry level. They move you around the different departments. And sure, you might have somebody who's a finance expert or a legal expert, but a lot of times people, I found this out to my astonishment, a lot of people in the contracts department had like a history degree or an English degree.
Interesting.
They weren't lawyers, right? And up until recently, I don't know exactly what the year was, but they started hiring attorneys to work inside of Japanese corporations because attorneys worked at law firms. And if you need them, you hire the law firm. Well, now they're hiring people to work inside the company, in-house, which is pretty new for Japan, right? And so, so they're insourcing their
Right.
legal work, yeah. But so what I'm trying to say is that rather than becoming an expert at accounting, you become an expert at working at that company.
Exactly, yeah.
So you got to know your way inside of XYZ Corp, in and out. You got to know the politics. You got to know the everything, the people, the different offices. You might get moved from Osaka to Hokkaido to Tokyo, wherever. You might get moved around, especially if you're on a management track, right?
Right.
You went to a good university. So you become an expert at being an employee of that company, right?
Right.
So you might be in contracts for a year, but then you might be moved to sales for a year or two.
Yeah.
And So what I'm trying to say is, rather than becoming a salesperson, you work in sales for a year, and then you move to not nothing like necessarily technical like engineering. They're not going to make you start coding or anything, but they might put you in marketing for a year,
Right.
right? Um, so there's some of those general jobs that you might get moved around, right? Sales support,
Sure.
shipping, supply, marketing, procurement. You might get moved around several times. Like I said, especially if you're on track for management,
Yep.
for top
Exactly.
level, right?
Yeah.
And so, how does that affect the company's cybersecurity readiness?
Yeah. Let me get this out there. I'm not opposed to shuffling. I think it's important for a business to, for people to understand different aspects of the business. But, and I can't speak to other areas like accounting or whatnot, but security is an evolving dynamic environment. And, if we think about like CIOs or CISOs in a traditional American company, they usually have a track that starts from, technology. They might have been like a system administrator. They just kind of worked their way up and slowly took on more responsibilities, more understanding of information security, until eventually they rose to the top and became a C-suite level security operator, right? Uh, and I say this because in Japan, like you were talking about, where they shuffle more of the managerial up at the top level. So in a sense, they're no longer technical. They don't have to be so technical. They just have to understand that business environment. And to shuffle them, they culturally understand how that business operates and how to manage them. Specific to security and cybersecurity, this is a dynamic environment that's evolving constantly. It's not something that stays the same year after year, and you can just take a break from it and then come back and think you know everything. It is
Ah,
a continuous, education for most of us.
oh, okay. Now I'm seeing the problem because you
Right.
are right. Especially not just management track, but not just management track, but management can
Hmm.
be shuffled around,
Right.
right? If you're at a certain level in your career where you have 50 direct reports, well then you can. I've seen it. You can become the manager of the compliance department.
Exactly.
Know nothing about law.
Right. Right. And also to add to that, and I've seen this firsthand. A department will be operated by a team, and they'll have a manager, and they'll have a project. That manager will take on a project or multiple projects, and they'll say, our company will, move to complete these projects, and they'll, operate that for 1 or 2 years, and then that manager gets removed, and a new manager from human resources, accounting, what have you, will come into the cyber department, and they'll have different agenda. They might not even have a clue what the project is, and what they're trying to make a name for themselves, right? And so from us being a client perspective, it's like we've spent this much time trying to get this on track, and then in comes in someone new, and we have to start all over again and educate and let them know why this is important. And all the meanwhile, the threats are still evolving. The landscape is changing. The knowledge base is changing. So it, it's a fun challenge to say the least. But I think it's culturally it's also an issue, right? Business culture wise in Japan, because it seems to happen a lot in traditional companies.
Yeah. Well, also if you get somebody who just came out of accounting or HR or contracts or sales and they're now in charge of cybersecurity for the company, they know nothing. They don't want to make a mistake. They
Exactly.
don't know the lay of the land, but they're used to managing 50 people
Right.
and being right. Being in management and knowing how to do the right reports to the CEO.
Right.
That's their specialty, not cybersecurity. So now
Yeah.
you're talking to somebody who's deciding whether or not to buy a service that has no clue.
And they don't want to be the first one to buy something either.
Oh no! Oh, First thing when you offer a service in Japan, the first thing they ask is who else is using it.
Yeah.
Because a founding partner in a major law firm here with like 500 attorneys told me one time, he's like, we don't want to be first, but we don't want to be last either.
I mean, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They don't want to be trailblazers for stuff. And, you don't have to be. You don't
true.
have to be. I think they don't want to be first in Japan. I mean,
That's right.
you can have a track record anywhere else in the world, but they don't want to be the first one to do it in Japan, right?
That's right, yeah. So honestly, having a good track record overseas doesn't guarantee success in Japan.
I mean,
Does that
it
sound
helps.
right, or-
But
It helps, yeah, of course, yeah.
Sure, it helps, but it certainly has no guarantees. I think Japan, overall, being a foreigner, I consider myself, even though I'm half Japanese, I'm an American citizen, and you hear this often. It's like Japan is a difficult business environment.
Oh, it's a tough nut to crack, yeah.
As an entrepreneur, it's even tougher, I think, to come in and figure things out. And trust me, I've been humbled more than once because I came in here trying to I know everything. No, it's quite the opposite. And every day, I mean, the challenge is part of the fun as well.
It is, yeah. You got to love the hunt, though.
Right. But I come into it with the feeling of I have something to offer to try and help this situation. I want to bring value to it. And so, it's not about like, oh, I want to have of course, everybody wants to, but it's also about, well, I have these skills. I understand this. And I think these are the areas that I can help out. But there's rewarding days.
Yeah. What's the funnest thing about your job?
I think this is going to sound so boring, but the business itself is actually fun, right? Just as I was just talking about the understanding and learning the culture, the business culture, understanding where I was wrong, maybe not realizing, coming into an environment thinking I know everything and realizing I didn't know anything. Those are the fun parts, the learning experience, right?
It's become a thrill for me to say I was wrong. Because now I get to learn something, and I love learning.
Absolutely. I have two 30-year-olds working for me, right? And I learn something off of them every day. They're like, Eddy, I don't think, this is the proper way to handle this, And now I've gotten to a point where I ask them, this is what I want to convey. Is this the appropriate tone? Is this the appropriate way to go about it? And they'll give me candid feedback.
That's cool.
It is really, really cool.
You need that, yeah.
And of course, I encourage it.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't be afraid. Don't be shy.
No. As the boss, you don't want yes men around you.
Absolutely.
Because, that's the end of the empire.
Right.
It's just... Yeah, sure, you're the emperor and everybody loves you, but they're not going to give you good feedback. And you're going to miss stuff. I mean, you're human. You're going to miss stuff.
I love this environment that we're creating within Almata where people have a voice. And trying to encourage that has been the funnest part.
That's incredibly important. So building a culture within your company as well, right?
Yeah.
That's, boy, I tell you what, those unicorns who can not only start a company, raise the money, get the customers, get the, everything together. I've heard this. There's the startup and there's the stay up, right? And I've helped startups before with legal work and some technology. Been on the board of a company before, and startup is not easy.
Yeah,
it's not for the
tough.
faint of heart, man.
I have these discussions almost daily. It's different phases. So like right now, we have these pen testing services, which are kind of new to Japan. We have a platform that's being developed. So we're going to be in SaaS sales. But once we start, getting traction, we're in a different phase. Now it's no longer the fun being innovative phase. Now it's how do you maintain, how do you continue to grow? And I think of like Apple, or Apple's a good one because they were innovative at first, but Steve Jobs didn't seem like he was a happy guy. Right? I mean,
he seemed kind of grumpy.
I didn't know him personally, but and I can't imagine having to continue to innovate while maintaining a business that's growing, because it's so easy to feel like, oh, I've achieved something. We were talking about one-hit wonders earlier, right? It's like, oh, okay, I built something great, and that's it. No, that's not it.
No,
you got to continue, right? So
you do.
How do you continue to innovate and come up with, valuable products and services while maintaining the growth of a company and doing all the business stuff that comes with it? It's so easy to just say, I've developed this, and now I'm just going to run with it and not do anything else. And that's not the right answer.
Yeah.
So,
and, I think, I hear a lot of people talk about luck, right? And I think, and this may sound, for what it's worth, just take it for what it's worth, everybody. Sometimes I think success too early can really be harmful. No, I think it's great. Like if you're a teenage prodigy and you're a great guitar player or, athlete or something, and you go out and make millions of dollars, good for you. Good for you. But when I started my YouTube journey, my podcast journey, especially the YouTube journey, one of my fears was, and this is a dumb fear because it's not going to happen, it was having a viral video too early. Because I want to have a couple hundred videos out there that people can come back to. If my first video gets 1 million views and they come back, he's only got one video. Well, there's no long-term growth there.
Right.
I have a couple hundred videos out, in the next year, and then one of them hits. Then people say, "Oh, I like that one. What else has he done?" Right. And so from that perspective, success too early can be harmful. Right. It can also be confidence boosting.
Right.
But also the struggle for me, and I look back at stuff I did a year ago, and it's horrible.
Right.
Oh no, what was I thinking? I can't even believe I hit publish on that. But I look at it and I think, each time I got better.
Absolutely. And to go off of that, there's value in failure.
Oh yeah.
Right? And I'm not saying that your earlier videos were failures, but you have to have something to measure against.
You do.
So if your first video becomes viral, what do you measure the success off of?
And what did you learn?
Yeah.
Right? And how do you duplicate that? It's like...
So if you have like a series of videos and then all of a sudden one gets to 1 million views, then you go, what did I do differently
this time
that got that? That's the learning process, right?
Yeah.
And then you try and up that.
Yep.
Right? So that's the process. I think that's true in most things, right?
I think so. Yeah, well, it's true in relationships. I mean, like as a teenager, your first date, you're a total loser. Like, oh, you're like, I forgot to open the door. Like, I'm eating like a pig, like I do with my friends. Like, oh no, she's never gonna go out with me again. How am I gonna make it through the 8th grade? It's over. No, but it's so many things in life. It just takes repetition and humility and practice and be gentle on yourself too. Like, and know that I've heard this a lot, and I've thought this a lot too. Is like, know that nobody's paying attention to you.
Right.
They're thinking about themselves.
Exactly. I think everybody's their own worst,
absolutely.
critic. So
absolutely.
And that's not a bad thing.
Not at all.
It's not a bad thing to want to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Have to do that to grow. And that's why, by the way, we have such a capacity for remembering bad things that happen.
I've heard that too.
So we don't repeat that.
Yeah.
Because if I remember all the good stuff I did, first of all, that makes me a jerk.
Right.
So I'm talking about the time I kicked a field goal in 12th grade.
Right.
For the rest of my life. And that would make me a loser. Mm-hmm. But if I remember the time that I was a bad dancer, or I made a mistake in school or socially or scholastically or whatever, and I remember that, okay, I'm not going to let that happen again.
Right.
Because it was so embarrassing. I walked out there with my fly open at the school dance and everybody laughed. Like, okay, and next time they see me at the high school reunion, I'm going to be in a 3-piece suit.
Right.
I'll show them,
Yeah.
And if that's what propels you to greatness, go for it. I hope you have other things that help you, though, that propel you to greatness. But like, if those failures propel you to greatness, then good.
Exactly.
Good for you.
Yeah. I think about this and by my kids. I've got a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I think it's different from, the growing up that I did, where you have an embarrassing moment or something bad happens, and you're like, but it was just one day.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to remember it except you.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Whereas kids today live in the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's forever. If somebody remembers, it's going to be like on YouTube or something. It's crazy.
I knew a guy who got in trouble at work because he was looking up. It was Super Bowl week. Mm-hmm. It was the week before the Super Bowl. And I forget which website it was, but he was looking up who's the quarterback going to be this weekend and what are their stats and who's going to win and all this. And on the right side of that article was, check out the wives of all these football players. And there's like a woman in a bikini.
Couldn't resist, huh?
No, somebody came up behind him and took a picture of him looking at that screen. Said, this guy's a pervert. He was looking at girls on the internet during work.
Yeah.
And of course, they went back to his history, and he was reading like, okay, who's the quarterback going to be this weekend? And that was an ad. Of course, by the time you check it again, that ad has changed, right? It's dynamic. But he's like, I was reading an article about the game, and that's an ad on the side. I didn't even notice it.
Wow.
So, if a kid makes a mistake now, it might be on camera.
Oh yeah.
And it might be.
Most definitely. It
might go viral.
I mean, how many video cameras do you think we walk by every day?
Oh man,
in Japan?
I don't even know.
I mean, you've got cameras on every house practically.
Everywhere.
Right? So if you wanted to track somebody, you can easily.
Like Enemy of the State. Great movie. All that's true now.
Yeah.
It probably was
wild.
Before we knew it, but honestly, you can. If you live in Tokyo, well, first of all, we got this little tracking device in our pocket.
Yep.
That's more powerful than the computer in the Apollo computer that went to the moon. But like, we've also got these cameras everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And what scared me, and I'm not at conspiracies, and I just like, and I don't want to get taken down off YouTube, but like, what kind of freaked me out was during this whole thing where every store had alcohol at the door, right? You got to wash your hands. Like, you got to put this stuff all over your hands when you go in. I don't know what that does to the immune system, because I grew up on a farm.
Right.
And we would milk the cows and then grab a piece of cheese off the counter without washing our hands.
Yep.
I got an iron gut, But I've heard, I'm not a doctor, but I've heard that too much hand sanitizer can make your immune system weaker. So when I was walking around to stores, and every time you go into a store, they're like, oh, sanitation, put that on your hands, And then the other ones, like, you had to put your face up to it was like an iPad or something, or a tablet. You had to put your face up there, and it checks your temperature, but also you're looking directly at it. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm, okay, where's my tinfoil hat? But I'm also putting my face up to that, which means I'm putting my eyes up to that, right?
It's getting all your biometrics?
All your biometrics. And then I think, like, okay, tinfoil hat boy, whatever. But then that department store, maybe they just want to sell me more clothes. But now they know my shopping patterns and how often I go in there. And 7-Eleven knows how often I go there, and they know where I live, and they know, like, in that credit card strip. Mm-hmm. Okay, now they can, and maybe they just target with better advertising. That's the worst case, right? But what if that department store gets hacked and they know everything about Tracy? Everything I bought the last 5 years, including Mother's Day and Father's Day and Christmas, and they know my credit card limit. And maybe I'm just freaking out over nothing, but what if? right? So the department store gets hacked. They got all my credit card information, my name, my address, all my information, my shopping habits, and then a bad actor has this info. And they can go to town.
Yeah. And I don't want to sound like the bad guy, but yeah, there's technology out there. I represent a company called Sovereign Intelligence,
Yeah.
and we have a software that looks at commercial data, and we use it to look at population dynamics,
Okay.
like how do people move throughout the city,
Yeah.
kind of stuff, right?
And that's important to know. That's
Absolutely.
good info to have, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, and we look at it at a macro level. Like, okay, I'm a real estate agent. Has this building gone up in value? Has it gone down in value? How many people are walking these streets every day? I want to put a restaurant here. Do these people live here? Do they work here? Should it be a nighttime restaurant? Should it be a lunch place? All of these things really play into that whole marketing. But it's all intelligence data, right? You're really, and the data that we're pulling from is cell phone activity, right? At a macro level. So we're not getting everybody, but we can look at trends. We can look at,
Sure.
But if we do, and it comes down to if you have your phone location turned on, off, and of course it's all anonymized.
Sure,
I don't know it's Tracy's phone.
Yeah, but you can
If
figure
I
out
look at
that,
your pattern, I could probably, if I wanted to single you out and you've got your location on, I could probably tell you where you hang out, where you work at, where you sleep at. I mean, those are all possibilities, but that's not the
That's
way
true.
that software is being used.
I forgot another device on my wrist.
Exactly. Yeah, you got your
It
iWatch.
knows everything I do.
It's connected. You live in a connected world, my friend.
Oh, I do. And then, like, this is funny because I can be at home. I'm listening to a podcast. Not only do I make podcasts, I love to listen to podcasts. I can be cooking, and one of the most annoying things is an ad comes on, and I want to skip 15 seconds. I got my AirPods on. The phone is on the dresser. I'm in the kitchen with my watch, my iWatch on. I can hit the button on my watch
It's so convenient.
to skip ahead.
I always forget.
Yeah.
I always forget that I can control it. through
Oh,
the
it's
watch,
great.
right?
It's great because it almost seems like, speaking of tinfoil hats, it almost seems like my phone knows when I walk away from it.
Yeah.
Because then an ad comes on.
Right. Interesting story. We were talking about this probably like back in 2012. There was a company that came out that was looking at it was for marketing, but it was clearly looking at signals coming off of cell phones, and they were trying to identify if you put up like a window, a shop with different Gucci bags or whatever, and somebody's walking by and they stop in front of that window for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Is this potentially a buyer? How much money do they make? What kind of job do they have? When they go after this to a bar, is this a bar of like mostly white men in their 30s with jobs, paying $150K a year? All of these types of analytics, right? And it really came down to people give out this information willingly.
Sure.
In return, we get convenience, right? So,
but if it's free, you're the product.
If it's free, you're the product, of course. But we do this willingly for the convenience. It makes our lives easier.
Yeah.
Right? But it also makes us vulnerable. But the opposite of this, and there's people that want to purposely not be, tracked. I think that's, speaking for most Americans, even though we love the convenience, we don't want to be tracked and everything else. But there's this thing called negative signature, right? So you have all this data, you're not getting all the data, so you start looking at what data you're not getting and why you're not getting that data.
Wow.
So then it becomes interesting, where it's like, are these people purposely not trying to be found? Or are they, trying to hide something? It becomes a more interesting problem set, right?
That's interesting. So if every Friday night when, let's say, John Doe goes out every Friday night from 7 to 10 p.m., but his phone is on his desk. Or let's say John Doe's phone is on his desk from 7 to 10 p.m. every Friday. Doesn't move an inch. But John is known to love going out on Fridays. Would that be negative information?
Sure. I mean, yeah, of course.
Interesting. So now we know that John's cheating on his wife.
I mean, you could make all kinds of analytical judgments, but
that's why I call him John Doe. So nobody comes after me.
Right. And at a macro level, it becomes even more interesting because, like, if you look at a city and there's just dead zones of no signature, it's like, well, what's there?
Wow.
Right?
What would that be?
I don't know. But, so there's all of that.
It's intriguing, though.
So the thought of we're just slaves and we're giving out all this information and we're being tracked, of course, but we do it in return, we get the convenience. But there's also this idea that, you could be tracked even if you're purposely trying to hide. So
you could be tracked by trying not to be tracked.
Right. So then if you want to kind of fall in line with everybody else, you provide this information willingly.
Wow, that's interesting. Wow. You're blowing my mind.
Tinfoil hat.
So no. It's good to know because, like you said, what information am I trying to hide now, right? And I, like I said, I try to think I don't have a criminal mind, but every once in a while my brain goes down this path. It's like, how did you think of that, you sicko? I wrote a paper. I got to give a shout out to Professor Merowitz from Michigan State University College of Law. He was my professor for the laws of war.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated in 2007. So like 2005, 2006, 2007, you know what the U.S. was up to at the time, right? We were at war. And the laws of war, Professor Merowitz, he was a paratrooper in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
Dude's a badass. When you looked into his eyes, you could tell he'd seen some things, right? But he was also a top litigator. And the guy just had no fear. Like, so if I were in court or in a fight at the bar, that's the guy I want to have my back. Was this guy. Right. He was that cool, like, and that solid, right? And we spent a lot of time talking about the status of enemy combatants. We talked about stateless actors, and where that's coming from was, let's say, a person in Iraq who's taken up arms against the U.S. military, but they're not Iraqi. They're from another country, or somebody in Afghanistan who's not from Afghanistan, but is fighting against the U.S. military. Okay, now they're a stateless actor,
right? And
I might have missed a couple things of this, but now they're a stateless actor. Okay, who do they belong to? If we catch them, does the Geneva Convention apply? Like,
exactly.
What laws apply? And people always say, like, military intelligence, they say laws of war. That's an oxymoron. Well, actually, okay,
we take it quite seriously.
There are laws of war.
No, we take it quite seriously.
We really do. And
the rules of engagement are very, very clear.
They're very clear, right? And so I think when we see something like Black Hawk Down, we think, oh, the fog of war and the chaos. Okay, oh, there's no law. No, there is. And there are people who spend their whole career on that. So, and respect to them, because that's something I don't have the stomach for. But a lot of the conversation in class is about stateless actors and the status of enemy combatants, and the whole class was so compelling, and just I was riveted. It was like going to see a Tom Clancy movie every Tuesday, like just hear this guy's stories and the way he brought things to life, right? And so he said, okay, your job for this semester, your assignment is to write a paper on something to do with the laws of war. And since we spent so much time talking about enemy combatants and stateless actors, I think most people wrote on those topics. But I was interested in cyber war in 2007.
Wow, you're early.
So I wrote a paper on, because I'd seen the movie War Games, right?
Yeah.
Where a kid almost started World War III by trying to hack a computer game, right? Well, would you like to play a game? You know, really. So, but I probably got the voice wrong, but it's been a while. But I thought, okay, what if I were an enemy and I were to hack the water system? So, Sun Tzu, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cut off the water for this state or this town,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Or maybe I light up their nuclear reactor, overheat it. Okay, maybe I do that remotely. Maybe I shut down the grid. Okay, and so the analysis was, is that an act of war? And at what point is it an act of war? And I went through the whole thing. And I spent a lot of time researching this, and I wrote it. And I even got down to the point where there are laws about destroying the environment in
Mm-hmm.
war. Okay, if I cause a nuclear spill, okay, what law have I broken? What convention of it? It's so fascinating. And my professor gave it back to me. I got an A. He said, "You take this and never show it to anybody." He was that scared.
Yeah.
Because the stuff that I brought up, he was used to, stuff about like, okay, this person's not from Afghanistan. They're fighting in Afghanistan against the U.S. What does the Geneva Convention say about that?
Right.
Can we detain them?
Right.
Can we question them? Are they, like, they're not wearing a uniform?
Right.
Right. Okay, who are they? How do we deal with them? I don't think he was ready for that. And I think I scared him.
And it's a very real thing.
Yes.
Right.
And
I mean, look at like the Colonial Pipeline. Look at the, the Ukrainian power grid back in 2015. Sort of like critical infrastructure that caused. We call it. We have two ways of identifying attacks. It's like kinetic or non-kinetic.
Yeah.
Am I just trying to ransomware somebody and get money, or did I just shut down a hospital and cause people to die?
Yeah.
And that's a very real thing. When you cause a kinetic,
happens.
when you cause a kinetic incident, it's
it happens too. I mean, if it can be okay. I heard this when I worked tech support in the early 2000s. We were told if this job can be done by phone, it can be done anywhere. And a lot of tech support got shipped overseas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I was also told there was a big push to go remote. This is before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the work I do can be done remotely. In fact, I have done work for a firm in the U.S. And but I was told if it can be done remotely, it can be done from anywhere. And I extrapolate that to, well, if I can go from the control room, if I can shut down the reactor from here, can I tunnel in through an outside source, an outside connection, get into that work computer and shut off the reactor or overheat it or shut off the water or shut down the grid or cut power to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
It just seems like and I'm trying to think I don't have a criminal mind, but and maybe I'm not even smart as the people who are actually doing this stuff, and maybe they're thinking I'm an amateur, but like if I can think of this and I spend 5 minutes a week on this, there are people who spend their whole all day thinking about it, and they're motivated.
Right.
Like you said, there's the money aspect, there's the fame, the bragging rights, but there's also the political, the resentment, I hate these people, I want these people to die, so I'm going to spend the rest of my life learning how to hack their system and destroy them. And I think I talked about Hewa Boke and the whole thing of feeling so safe, like you're in a hot bath and it's just so safe and nice. And most people don't understand that there are bad people out there.
Yeah. I mean, when we think of, power grids and critical infrastructure, they're all mostly like industrial control systems. And within that realm, they separate those two between the IT side and what they call the operational technology, the OT side.
Okay.
And really, there's supposed to be a clear split between the IT and the OT. The OT are like, if you can think of pumps and actuators that run the facility on the ground. And this could be applied to like manufacturing and other areas. But or even if you can think of ships, container ships, they're operating
boy.
industrial control systems because, there's a clear split between the IT and the communication system, and then there's a bridge that connects to the motors and everything else, the propellers.
Aren't they also operating on GPS?
Exactly. And well, there's all kinds of technologies.
What if I'm a real
involved.
jerk and I hack the satellite and send them
And
1,000 miles off course?
Another thing, right? Hacking satellites is kind of a big thing now too, right?
Oh my gosh.
But if you can think of it in the past within the ICS, it was a clear split between how you operated on the ground, the field, with the pumps and actuators. And these pumps and actuators are developed as they're very expensive, and they don't get changed out often. They usually last at least 30 years. Now we live in today's society, and we want to be able to monitor them. We want to be able to make sure they're running properly. So they're slapping on technology on top of that.
IoT devices.
Right. So
actually, a friend of mine makes those.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah. So then you have, your process logic controllers. You've got all these systems now. And then even the system that, we call them human machine interface, HMIs, which are basically your gateway into the OT side. And that allows you to calibrate, make sure they're operating correctly. But if you can hack that, I mean, think of if you can hack it to say you're not calibrated, even though you are.
Oh, no.
And then you actually get a human to change the calibration because they think it's out of whack.
You basically socially engineered that.
You just completely demolished an entire facility.
Oh, no.
Or you could, potentially,
So you
right?
say it's overheating, so they turn it down. Or
even though it's not.
Or you say the pressure's way down, so they turn the pressure up and blow up the pipeline.
I mean, it's a very real possibility if you can get into those systems. So even though there's a clear split between the IT and OT, you're still relying on technology to a degree, right?
Well, and nobody can just see. Nobody's like Superman has X-ray vision to just look in the pump and see.
Exactly.
They're reying on that
to tell them something, and you put your trust into it.
Yeah, and you've been doing this job for 20 years. It's always been right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, think of one of those oil rigs out in the ocean. It could potentially flip over. I mean, you could do some serious damage.
Yeah,
the ballasts on those things. Are
they don't pay enough for those jobs.
Yeah.
Whatever they're paying is not enough.
I always feel like they're making a lot more money than
I hope they are.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they die.
Yeah, it's a really dangerous job.
It's no joke, man.
And they're away from family and everything.
Yeah.
So.
That's hard. But imagine, okay, if you and I are in this building and the apartment next door to us blows up, we can just run down the hall and get away.
Right.
If we're on an oil rig out in the middle of the ocean and there's a fire, you can't just get in your car and drive away.
No.
And you can't call the fire department.
Right.
You are the fire department.
Yeah. Incredible though.
Yeah.
But it's so crazy to think about all the vulnerabilities that exist around us, right? We're just operating.
Isn't it amazing that this world works at all?
I hope there's. I hope it's safe. I'm just as guilty.
No, I've done just fine.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that it all works. I can push a button on my computer and somebody delivers me food.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I push another button and somebody sends me a paycheck. That's pretty cool.
I want that button.
Yeah. Actually, it's a lot of buttons and a lot of mouse clicks, and a lot of thinking. They
did that on purpose.
They did. Yeah,
they didn't want to pay you.
No, but no, it is amazing that this all works because you got somebody, an architect who designed this, and a plumber who put this together. Put the pipes together, and the electrician who put the air conditioner in, and then put the right wiring in so this refrigerator works and the stove works. And I use it every day to cook. And then I take a shower, the water goes away. I flush the toilet, the water just goes away. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's all done for me, right? Push another button, the TV comes on. I can watch Amazon Prime, stream hundreds of TV shows and movies and games and YouTube on the TV. And
imagine if you didn't have electricity.
oh man,
What
what
would
a
we do?
horrible!
We'd have to start fires to keep warm and
Oh my gosh.
go hunt for our own food.
Ah, now we call that recreation. It's called camping. But if that's your whole life and that's all you've known, that's why the life expectancy was so low a couple hundred years ago. It's like, first of all, I didn't have the medicine,
Yeah.
didn't have ambulances like we do today, you know. But and medicine has gone so far in the last 200-300 years.
Yeah, it's incredible.
But electricity, if you think about it, if we didn't have electricity, I've heard different numbers of the millions or possibly billions of people who would die if they shut off the electricity today for the whole world.
Wow. I haven't seen those numbers, but I can imagine.
Well, if you just think about it, just take it a couple steps. Like, okay, people who are on insulin, if they don't get insulin, what happens?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, where do you keep the insulin? In the fridge.
Right.
What does the refrigerator run on? Electricity.
Yep.
Okay. Grandpa had a heart attack. He's on a machine for the next couple weeks. Or grandma needs dialysis.
Right.
What does that run on? Electricity. Okay, the doctor prints out a report using electricity.
Yeah.
Looks up grandma's vital signs using electricity. Like everything in the fridge, electricity. You
Yeah.
know? And so the ability to have, it's a modern problem, is this abundance and obesity, but like electricity has allowed the population to grow, you know?
Yeah.
And
I mean, even in the
amazing.
United States, there's, you've heard of people like prepping or
Oh, sure,
like
sure.
preparing for,
Yeah.
this. You don't know if it's ever going to happen, but it's
Yeah.
always good to know how to make
Oh, yeah.
alcohol for purpose of medicine.
Oh yeah.
Grow your own food, store it. How do you
Get some
can?
chickens. Yeah.
How do you hunt?
Mm.
How do you, make bullets even to be able to
Yeah.
hunt? These are all like real skills that people
Yeah.
possess to be able to be prepared for potentially
Yeah.
a world that
Yeah.
has become so reliant on.
Or even just a snowstorm.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in snowstorms where it knocked out the power for,
Yeah.
let's say, over a week.
Yeah.
That was tough. You're like,
It's
when
really
is it going to
hard.
come on?
Yeah, and if you don't know how to get fresh water,
Exactly. Yeah,
right? What do you do? And if you're always just used to Uber Eats every day,
Yeah.
and suddenly the the delivery system shuts down, this just-in-time delivery system we have in Japan,
Right.
and all the convenience stores are empty, and stores are empty, and that's it.
I mean, this is very similar to cybersecurity in that sense, right? To be prepared for
Yeah.
potentially being hacked. And do you have a plan?
Do you have a disaster recovery plan?
Do you have a disaster recovery plan? Do you have an incident response plan? Do you know what to do if something happens, whether it's small or big? How do you operate in an environment not knowing?
Yeah.
And the best thing you could do is just have a plan, right?
And in the fog of war, like let's say a company gets hacked and a bunch of customer data gets leaked, or they get hacked and something goes wrong, or some kind of industrial espionage or whatever. How do they respond, right? That response, by the way, and I'm thinking of several different cases of like industrial problems or scandals, financial, etc., where the response was almost worse than the incident,
Yeah.
right?
They could have done better.
I've seen some pretty bad blunders, and I'm not in that position for a reason, because I shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking, like, 10-year-old could have done better than that. Come out and say, hey man, I'm sorry, we messed up.
Right. There's the whole accountability factor of
Yeah.
it, right? We spend so much time trying to hide from our failures that,
Yeah.
I mean,
And then also the out of touch executive. Like I want to say it was a BP executive who was talking about a major oil spill. He says, "Can I just get back to my life?" Like I just can we just like end this press conference because I got stuff to do.
oh jeez.
And I don't remember the exact quote, so I'm totally paraphrasing and
Right.
probably made up most of that. But the attitude is like, can I go back to my life now? Like,
Yeah, this
are we?
happened, and
Yeah,
yeah,
are we done here? Type of attitude.
I'm busy.
Yeah, and it just came across as like, oh, dude.
Uh,
And
the
there's
optics were bad on that one.
so bad, and people talk about learning opportunities, and sometimes I think that's trite, but it's also like sometimes I had a really good professor for alternative dispute resolution, Professor Bajikian. She was amazing, and she had an article on how to make an apology.
Oh,
Yeah, and it was amazing when and how to make an apology. She taught this in law school.
that's great.
Yeah, because a lot of times people sue because of ego,
Right.
or they felt like they brought something up to somebody, said, hey, I think this is wrong. The person turns around and says, oh, shut up, get out of
Right.
my face. Like,
Okay.
okay, well, I'll sue you then.
Right.
Okay, like I bought
Could
a
have saved
product.
a lot.
Yeah, I bought a product, it broke, it fell on my foot, and my toe hurts. I go back to the store and say, hey, this broke and it fell on my toe and my toe hurts. And they say, not our problem.
Mm.
And you say, okay, I'm going to sue you then, right? Well, if they would have just said, like, are you okay? Did you go to a doctor? Like,
Right.
how did you get here? Like, are you okay?
Show some compassion.
Just show some compassion. Show some compassion. And say,
I knew what you meant.
yeah, dude, you okay? you know? It's that old thing of like, the guy gets in a car accident and he's like, the lawyer
Mm-hmm.
who gets in a car accident in his Porsche. He's driving down the Pacific Coast Highway, and a car hits him and shears off his left arm. And he jumps out of the car. I'm gonna sue you! I'm gonna sue you! Look at my Porsche! Look at my Porsche! The guy says, "Dude, your arm!" And he goes, oh, "My watch!" So it's about priorities, right? Like, a lot of times just asking people, hey, you okay? Like,
Yeah.
hey, how can we make this right? There was another example of, and this was taught in a negotiation course, not a law course, but there was a negotiation class where just trying to make things right
Mm-hmm.
and being nice had so much better result than like pushing back. So I don't even know if it's true, but there's a story that's taught in negotiation class where a couple had an older home,
Mm-hmm.
and a mover came in and either dropped something on the carpet or tore the carpet. And the old couple said, like, hey, our carpet. The guy's like, not my problem. So they call up the manager. The manager like, not my problem. They call up the owner. Not my problem. And so they say, well, our carpet is torn up and we can't afford new carpet. So what do we do? And their friend said, well, you got to sue them or they're not going to do anything. So they get a lawyer and the company gets a lawyer and they sit down and everybody's mad. And a smart person comes in the room and says, how can we make this right? The couple said, well, if we could just put a little rug over that hole in the carpet. The guy went to Target, $20, bought him a rug to put over the carpet, sit in front of the coffee table, and they were happy. $20. They were going to sue for like 10 grand.
We don't communicate, do we?
Not at all. People are, that's why I say it's amazing this whole thing works.
But, in Japan,
Yeah.
I feel like, if you had a broken product and you brought it back to the store, they would be like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
We apologize for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
inconvenience of you having to go all the way home and coming back.
Customer's king.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's
make it right.
I don't know if they're always customers king, but they do a really good job of making you feel better.
They do.
So
They really
and
do,
and
yeah.
it doesn't cost anybody anything to do
Not
that,
at all.
right?
Not at all. Yeah, I think it's just that they don't put their ego into it.
Yeah.
And they put so much pride into their work. Like I was telling a friend, like the person at Starbucks or Denny's or whatever that's putting their heart and soul into welcome you to the store and
Right.
then making you a coffee and then cleaning the tables and wiping the floor and smiling and saying thank you when they leave. It's like, how do they do that? Like it takes, and they're like, they put pride in their work. That's why.
Absolutely. It's so great to see.
Beautiful.
It's great to be surrounded by people like that too.
Yes.
It makes you want to work harder.
Yeah, it makes me want to be my best.
Yeah, absolutely. So
it's great. It's I don't know whether it's intentional or not, but people just say like, well, they take pride in their work. That's why the food is so good here. The restaurants.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
We we definitely feel. I mean, I feel like the quality is so good here. You know,
the streets are clean.
Absolutely. I love getting up at 6 a.m. and going outside and seeing all the old lady or the old man like cleaning the streets in front of their house.
Yeah.
I take so much pride into that.
They'll either use like a hose or like
a
what's like a little bucket.
Yeah.
And they'll just like
sit there and they
clean the curb
and
oh, it's amazing.
It's amazing. It's a beautiful country.
It's amazing. And then the thing back to the disasters, like I got a photo of it on the door at 7-Eleven. They tell you don't take pictures in the store, but I had to take a picture. When the first lockdown of many happened, I walked in there to get something, and the instant ramen section was empty.
Oh wow! Okay.
And we're starting a lockdown.
Yeah.
You know? This is about the time where they were saying, okay, 2 weeks and we'll pull out of this. You know.
It was the early days.
Early days, yeah. And the instant ramen was gone. I was like, wow.
And everybody was like, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
3 years later.
Yeah. But it was just so funny to see that they had bottled the instant ramen.
Right.
Because, like, I think that's just what people eat. They're like, oh, man.
It's not perishable and lasts. And,
yeah.
You know, tastes good.
So, but it was kind of cute, but it was also kind of like, wow, people are really kind of freaked out about this. So
I mean, the whole toilet paper thing, too.
Yeah.
That was kind of big news.
In a country that has a bidet everywhere, you know. So
yeah, seriously, we could be doing worse.
Yeah, they could be doing a lot worse. Like, yeah, no. An Aussie friend said to me, he's like, "You guys aren't going to have a toilet paper shortage. Like, you have washlets." Oh well, but you know, it's the unforeseen, right? It's the unknown.
Right.
I think that we're trying to prepare people for, right? Talking about cybersecurity.
Yeah. Absolutely, and you know, Japan with its earthquakes and
there's that
natural
too.
Disaster preparedness, and they have plans for all of that.
Yeah,
they figure out all that stuff, and they do really well with it.
Yeah, they
to
do.
include how do we build buildings? We put in code. Now, right?
Well, if you go out here, go south, I want to say, or like go towards Shinagawa.
Yeah.
You look up and they're fortifying the freeway.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
They're doing that in sections around the
city. Is that
city.
For the earthquake? Or,
yeah, for
the
earthquake.
Tsunami kind of thing?
They're fortifying the earthquake, fortifying the freeway.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an elevated freeway.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and they do it in sections around the city periodically. Yeah. And they'll go through and they do inspections. And they'll... I don't know how they do it. Like, how do you fortify a freeway? That's like it's more like an elevated freeway.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how you make it stronger. I don't know, but they're doing it.
Interesting.
And they have a sign up in Japanese and English that says that they're working on that. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And then they put these huge drapes around it, so like no debris falls down. It's like
they're very
so meticulous.
Yeah,
man.
they're very meticulous about that.
It's amazing. So, but it's preparing for that thing, and I think once Japan really grasps and takes hold of cybersecurity awareness, they could really be at the forefront because
I think so. Yeah.
This culture of kaizen, of continual improvement, and also Japan is this country that is so used to having natural disasters. They're used to earthquakes and tsunami and just typhoons.
Right.
You know, rainy season. And when people hear rainy season, they think of rain. No, it's windy. Typhoons.
It's kind of sideways.
Yeah, where like you'll see a skinny person walking down the street and you feel like they're gonna blow away.
Sure.
And you open up your umbrella and it just breaks into pieces.
Yeah,
it's just useless.
Useless, absolutely.
That's why you got to wear a poncho or something, you know. But so Japan has this history of being vulnerable to natural disasters, fires.
Mm-hmm.
Was it early 1900s, maybe 1919 or something like that, where there was a fire and there was an earthquake that hit during lunchtime. And people used to cook at home over an open flame or over coals.
Right.
And the earthquake happened at lunchtime. And so all these burning embers were let loose on the town.
All the houses were made of wood.
And poof.
Yeah, it's devastating.
Yeah, like all at once. The houses are all made of wood, paper windows.
Yeah.
They're cooking over an open flame in the middle of the house. Tatami mats, straw mats, right? And the whole city just went poof in seconds,
Right.
And so I think Japanese have it's in their DNA to understand that you're vulnerable to natural disasters. So I think once they make the connection to cybersecurity, you might see them like move ahead of the rest of the world.
Completely agree. I mean, and one of the biggest questions I get from, various investors or even clients is like, why Japan? Why'd you choose Japan? You could have easily started this in America or anywhere else, really. Japan's such a hard place to kind of crack, as we spoke earlier, from an entrepreneurial aspect. But I saw it as an opportunity. Japan is quick to execute, and as soon as they understand the problem, like right now, look at AI, look at robotics, look at manufacturing, they're miles ahead, right?
Oh yeah,
I don't see security being any different once it's realized as a necessity.
The funny thing is they make like a character for it, or like, the Pepper, the robot, right? The SoftBank robot.
Yeah.
I was just making a video about the 10 richest people in Japan, and Masayoshi's son is one of them, the founder of SoftBank. And Pepper is one of their robots. It's a cute robot. Okay, in America, if we were to say like we're gonna put robots in the home, you'd be like, here's a robot. Look how functional it is.
RoboCop.
Yeah, it's gonna be RoboCop, right? Tell the kids to come in, Well, here they make it cute, and so people adopt it.
Yeah.
Like these cleaning robots, right? That go around and they play music. La 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 la. I'm a robot. Look at me. I'm helpful.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing as like a Boston Dynamics robot. It's just cute. So people accept it. Right? America could learn a lot from Japan in that aspect. But their adoption rate, it's like we said, it's, takes 10 years and then overnight, boom, they adopt. And that'd be exciting to see that happen for you too.
I just want to see Japan, continue down this path of, being safe and not having to feel like you're always having to lock the door. Like in America, we always lock the door behind us. We never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't want people to feel like they're always going to get attacked, or there's this looming cyber attack that's about to happen.
Yeah, you don't want to feel vulnerable.
You don't want it to be visible to the common person.
That's true. Yeah.
It should be the responsibility of the company to secure data, but it doesn't necessarily have to be visible. People just, people entrust you with the data. It should just be one of those things where it's like, okay,
it should be something like you're
put my data into
this
the system. Yeah. Somebody's watching over it, and they're doing everything they can to protect it. Now, of course, that's not true, right? But it should be. It should just come with the package.
But you want them to feel safe, don't want them to feel vulnerable or paranoid, or worse, feel paranoid, right?
It should be like an Apple Watch or your Gmail account,
Yeah.
You should feel like you're not going to get spammed all the time.
Yeah, that's a pain.
That your phone's going to work the way it's supposed to work. And it should all be invisible, all the complex stuff.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. What else we got to cover? ChatGPT. Any thoughts on ChatGPT?
I'm excited for the future of AI. I'm excited for what ChatGPT will evolve into. I think it's great now.
Yeah.
I get all the stories about, like, we need to be careful with AI. I agree with that. And when you really think about AI and what it's doing right now,
Yeah.
it's crazy to think what we could do
Yeah.
with the future, right?
Yeah. Well, I've used ChatGPT, and I'm using the free version, which is only got data up until 2021.
Right. September, right?
Yeah. So it's not complete. It doesn't have last week's events, right? So if I were to ask it about last year's Super Bowl, it'd be like, yeah, good luck. But I asked it about privacy law in Japan. And now I forget I'd have to look it up, but I don't want to open up my computer. It told me in a specific article of the Japanese Constitution that it covers privacy law. I was like, really? I thought that article was about the emperor.
Oh, interesting.
And so I go to the Japanese government website and look up that specific, and I can't remember the article. I look up that specific article, and it's like the role of the emperor. And so I went back to ChatGPT and I said, it appears that this article is about the emperor. Can you try to generate that answer again? And it says, oh, I'm sorry about that. The correct article is, I was like, wait a second. You just confidently told me that this article of the Japanese Constitution is, in English, by the way,
Right.
is about privacy, or my right to privacy.
Right.
Right. And then when I challenge you and you're like, oh, yeah, I was wrong about that. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So it's not perfect
It's
yet.
not perfect. Absolutely not.
And I've used it, what it's good for. ChatGPT is good for, in my case, is coming up with ideas, right? Like, okay, please give me 10 ideas for a YouTube video about what's different in Japan.
Right.
Or please give me 10 ideas for a viral video on YouTube about what it's like to be a foreigner in Japan. Okay, here are 10 ideas. Go to a pachinko parlor. Oh, by the way, but ChatGPT doesn't know that it's illegal to film in a pachinko parlor.
Right.
So
I didn't know that.
I gotta do some research on my own. It's a great springboard, right?
Yeah.
Or it says like, go to a convenience store and film at a convenience store. Well, every convenience store you go up to, it says no photography.
Right.
So that's a non-starter itself, Or go to a Japanese sumo match. Like, I think you can do that,
Right.
no problem. But I don't want to spend like $500 to make a YouTube video when I have 100 followers, right? So, but it's a great place to start, right? But you have to kind of fact check ChatGPT right now.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I've used it to research some stuff, but I've always asked it to give me the source of where it came with the information.
That's a good one.
So if it's going to provide me with the information, I want to be able to vet it. So
how do you put that command in?
Just say,
please cite the source?
Yeah, please cite the source. Give me the answer to this, and please cite the source where you got the answer.
I have learned, and so I listened to Lex Friedman's podcast, and I forget which episode it was, but it said that it's not necessarily ChatGPT's fault, it's the person putting in the question. Right? So if I were to say, give me 10 ideas for a video, it'd be like, okay, turn on your camera and film the bird in your garden.
What's the word now? Prompt engineer?
Prompt, yeah.
Engineer?
Prompt engineer? Okay.
They're coming out with that. Like, it's a real thing.
You got to learn how to write the prompt. Like, it's like years ago, it was a Boolean search, right?
Yeah, I love Boolean.
Okay. I love those. They're so convenient. So if you understand that concept,
right,
then you can also learn how to be write a good prompt for ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And so what I'll do is, I asked her, for example, okay, what's a catchy title for a YouTube video about street photography in Japan? And it gave me like 2 paragraphs. I'm like, okay, what's a catchy title in 10 words or less for a video about this?
Right.
And it'll give me something 10 words or less, right?
Yeah.
But it's really, in my case, now I got to start adding that, like, please tell me the answer to this, and then please tell me the source where you got it. I got to start doing that. That's great advice. But I've learned that This is one of my favorite terms. I've been looking for a chance to use this. It's a PEBCAC error. Problem exists between keyboard and chair. Problem exists between chair and keyboard, right? It's a PEBCAC error.
Interesting.
So
I've never heard that term.
if the problem exists between the keyboard and the chair, that's the human.
Right.
Right. So if ChatGPT gave me a terrible answer, it's like, okay, what was the question? Are you asking the right question? Right.
Yeah, exactly. How are you asking it? How is it comprehending it? I think even more interesting and fascinating is the fact that the internet is a world of garbage. It's just full of everything. You know, I mean, it's got really good information.
Sure.
But it's got a lot of crap in there.
How about if I say next time, like...
You know, it's like, and it's able to deduce the better answers out of this landfill of information, right?
Yeah.
It's able to find the answers that you're probably looking for out of this world of...
this constant barrage of information.
That's crazy technology in itself.
Well, I've heard that just YouTube alone, there's like 500 hours per minute uploaded to the YouTube.
Wow.
It's crazy. I could be wrong. I could be like totally making up numbers, but I've heard it's like 500 minutes per hour.
I mean, ChatGPT right now is all text. Right?
I got the wrong number.
But imagine when we can tap into all the videos and all the dynamic content that's out there.
Yeah. Well, there's, what is it? Journey is an AI picture generator. I think it's a paid service, but you can say like make a picture of, I don't know, make a picture of Brad Pitt.
Yeah, there's a few apps out there like this. Yeah.
Make a picture of Brad Pitt standing next to me, and but make me more muscular than him, you know, or make a picture of Brad Pitt at 20 years old, and put him at the Eiffel Tower, and he's just saved somebody from falling from the Eiffel Tower. Like, you know, you can put in those pretty complex commands and it'll just come up with a picture, and it's pretty dang good.
I've seen a few of those.
Or in the style of Van Gogh.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing, right?
Pretty crazy. Yeah. So what that worries me is that and I've heard that so when these different image generators started coming online, they would sometimes have weird idiosyncrasies, like the mouth would be wrong.
Yeah.
Or it would look like an impressionist painting in like one way, like the feet would be off or something. You know, when you take a panorama picture and the subject moves, right?
Yep.
So you have this person who like their one leg is straight and the other leg is like
a little bit off, right?
Going off to the side, you know, because they moved when you're taking the panorama. There's some great panorama mistakes or whatever that are up you can find, but they look like that sometimes. So I've heard that there are people who would buy an extra finger to put on their hand and wear in public. That way, if somebody got a picture of them from a security camera, they could say, "Oh, that's AI generated. Look, I got 6 fingers."
Yeah, there was some stuff out there like that, like you could wear clothes that.
Yeah, I don't know if those work.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but they had like different images on the shirt. So
and I saw a necklace for sale that's supposed to like overexpose the camera or something. So so everything around the necklace appears as
too
like bright white. Yeah.
I
don't know if those work.
It's been around forever.
Right. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, have you heard of like funny story. I'm gonna put this out there. I got spearfished the other day.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I got an email, and by my name, they were like, Eddy. They perpetrated to be by somebody that I knew, who is a client of mine, a CEO, and it was like, we're getting ready to buy or acquire another company, and our law firm has advised us to do it from the Japanese office. And they were like asking for banking information. You can't tell this to anybody because it will negate the sale of the...
We have an NDA. don't tell anybody.
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't the NDA. It was that because it would go against SEC or something.
Oh, that's clever.
It was really detailed, and it came from that person's email address. So we can't talk on the phone about this. There were like clear boundaries.
Wow.
Yeah, and we need you to go to the bank and tell us how much money is in there so that we can, wire you the rest of the money so that we can make this transaction happen, kind of thing. And I was like, some doesn't add up.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really clever. I was quite surprised, and so I said, "Yeah, got it. I understand, but just for security reasons. I don't know. I don't know if this is really you. Can you tell us what year we met and how we met?" And the person on the other end, they were like communicating on, pretty rapidly. They took about 30 minutes. They probably went on LinkedIn and tried to research
how
some
do they
stuff.
know each other?
It was clearly a LinkedIn answer, which was wrong,
Whoa.
which I knew. But they came back 30 minutes later and they were like, thank you for being security conscious. We really appreciate that. We met in this year, da 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 da. I was like, wrong. So I just killed the communication at that point. But
Good for you.
But the reason why I bring this up is we're talking about AI, and hackers are starting to use voice AI.
Oh, wow.
So they're taking voices of people of authority, like CEOs, and they would make a call, and they would say, "Hey, this is Mr. Whoever. I'm on this business trip right now, but I need you to go into the account and send this much money. I'll send the rest over email. I can't talk right now. I'm on travel or whatever." So they're using AI voiceovers.
Wow.
So there's a sense of legitimacy. And this is, of course, a form of social engineering where they're building trust with somebody,
Oh my
trying to
gosh.
execute a hack like that.
That's pretty wild. Because I was on, I want to say Instagram or Twitter the other day, and then an ad comes up and it's a famous person talking about vitamins. I'm like, wait a second. This guy has his own vitamin company. There's no way he's shilling for these guys that I've never heard of.
Right.
And sure enough,
Huh.
somebody later said, "Hey, did you see that? That was pretty crazy, huh? That guy would never shill for an unknown company, He's got his own vitamin company." It's like, whoa.
That's crazy, yeah.
That was pretty bad. And it wasn't just the famous person. It was a known friend of his, and they're sitting there having a conversation. Like, dude, did you know about this vitamin? Oh, yeah, it's the best, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty
dude,
elaborate.
it was crazy. It was done so well. But then, since I know that this person owns a nutrition company,
Right.
there's no way he'd be shilling for some unknown. Like, I never heard of this nutrition company ever. Right. And I would have heard of it by now if he were involved. Right.
But how many people don't have that knowledge?
No. And I tell you, the voice was dead on.
Really?
And here's what people will do is they'll add background noise.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
Yeah, like
Make it sound real.
yeah, because a lot of these influencers, I think if somebody's too busy to stop their car and make a video, I think you're a jerk. Like these influencers who are like, they're driving down the street making a video. Hey man, hurry up and buy my information product. This offer is only good for the next 2 days. It's like, I tell you what, if you're gonna teach me how to make $1 million online, stop the car and take a video.
Right.
You're not that cool. So, but what they can do is they can add traffic in the background. They can add background noise, an air conditioner, music.
Yeah.
And now you can't. And you know how I know this? Because I edit video. And when the sound is bad, I can cover for it with music or background effects.
Interesting.
By the way, I manufactured the inside of a pachinko parlor. It took 10 different layers of sound.
Interesting.
But I got it. and it's pretty convincing. I'll show it to you
That's
later.
cool.
Yeah. But I used toy laser guns, a crowd at a baseball game talking. Because, pachinko parlors are loud.
Yeah.
You hear this, like indistinct noise.
Right.
And the other one was,
How do you mimic the sound of the balls like going through?
there were a couple things in there, but it was a hammer sped up.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
And I had to add, because like the sound of the ball is like, right? I had to layer multiple sounds to it. And then it's really cool.
What made you want to do that to begin with?
Because I got into an ego match with my computer.
There's nothing like this on the internet.
I'm like,
I'm
well,
gonna put it out there. And,
also I was doing something, so Sankyo is a huge company in Japan, and they make pachinko machines, and I'm doing a video on the 10 richest people in Japan,
oh, interesting.
and one of them is the founder of Sankyo, the
Oh, wow.
pachinko machine maker. It's worth several $billion. Several
Holy
billion, I
cow.
can't remember now at this point, but I wanted to show a pachinko machine and have the sound of pachinko parlor. But as an attorney, I'm thinking, if I sample somebody else's sound, I'm going to get a copyright strike.
Right.
So
So you got creative.
I got creative.
That's
I used
pretty
a toy
awesome.
laser gun. I used a typewriter. I used a what else? Many sounds.
You've got to have really good ear to be able to, separate
just-
all the various layers of sound that comes with a pachinko
There's
parlor.
like 3 or 4. There's the like indistinct noise of people talking,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's the video game sound.
Okay.
Yeah. There's the metal balls dropping.
I don't know anything about pachinko. I know.
Neither do
know-
I.
Yeah.
I've only experienced
They're
pachinko
loud,
one
though.
time.
I know they're loud.
It's horrible. It's loud and smoky, and I can't see anything good out of playing pachinko.
I don't
coming out of that.
even understand it.
Neither do I. But I've played pachinko one time in my life, and I found a metal ball on the sidewalk in front of a pachinko parlor.
Uh-huh.
This is all my experience with pachinko. I walked in there, I put it in the machine, and I turned the wheel, and the ball went somewhere, and I'm like,
1,000 balls came out.
no, nothing
No?
happened. The ball went away. I was like, okay, that's it. I guess I've played pachinko now. And it wasn't that exciting, and it was noisy and smelled like stale cigarettes and sweat.
It's exciting to a lot of people. I just
guess
don't. I just
so.
don't know how to. I don't even understand how to play it. So
no, it's like, well, they say it's like pinball, but it's not at all.
right,
Because pinball, you have the flippers, right?
right.
In pachinko, you have a dial, and you turn the dial, and the harder you turn it, the farther they fly, or whatever. You can adjust how far the little ball flies, and it goes through a series of pins, and you got to make it hit targets on the screen. It's a mechanical screen, and that's why people say it's like pinball, because it's a metal ball.
Yeah, I know there's like pins, and then there's a bunch of balls that go.
Yeah,
through
and you gotta hit a certain place in
order
the
to get-
machine, yeah. And if you can time it just right, and you can adjust the speed of the ball just right,
Does the
then
dial adjust the speed of the ball?
it does, yeah.
Okay.
So if you can do it just right, you can hit the right place, and then you win a bunch of little steel balls
Which you can then transfer for funds.
for prizes. Yeah.
For
Well,
prizes.
so the officially
Uh-huh.
you can. It's like a game center. You can trade those in for prizes.
Okay.
Unofficially, you walk around the corner and you trade them in for cash.
Walk around outside the
Outside,
shop?
yeah. Walk
I
outside.
didn't know that.
And it's just this secret that everybody knows. So when I lived in Yokohama, I would walk past these places all the time. And
Is that like a loophole? Loophole in the.
it is, yeah. So
balls?
you can trade, like, if you get, buckets and buckets of these balls, you can trade them in for a little, almost like a token. And then that token is worth cash.
Yeah.
But the reason they have these massive pachinko parlors is because people spend money there.
Yeah, I mean,
All gambling is
if
just
you walk around, they're always full.
they are.
There's always people in there.
And I've been to small towns where the local economy is depressed
Mm-hmm.
and coffee shops, restaurants, mom and pop shops are closing down, and the one booming business is pachinko.
So it's addictive.
Oh yeah, it must be.
Interesting.
Like that and alcohol.
Yeah,
Right.
I can understand alcohol, but
I
like,
mean, me too. But like when things are good, people celebrate.
yep,
When things are
bad,
when things are bad, they drink
drink, yep,
to
yeah,
drown their
misery, or
misery.
whatever.
Yeah, to drown their sorrow. So I think pachinko's kind of the same thing. As like,
Yeah.
hey, things are good. We got some extra money. Let's go play.
I see.
Or things are so bad. Like
Hmm.
all I want to do is just go play pachinko. I don't know, and I can't understand that, but I can see where that noise and the atmosphere and the lights could be so almost kind of mesmerizing. Where like you walk past and like I can't.
Yeah.
I
get-
can't walk past.
I guess what gets me, I mean, I've been to Las Vegas. I'm not a gambler, but I've pulled the slot machine
Sure.
or tried to play blackjack, which I'm not good at. I did roulette once. But yeah, you got different games.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I'm tired of this. I want to go try my hand at this. Whereas like pachinko shop, it's just this one thing.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple different machines, but like,
So they're different games, but
yeah, but it's the
okay.
same concept.
All right.
You just like shooting these little still balls across the screen to try to hit a target, and
Yeah, that's
they come down and bounce around on pins. It's like,
crazy.
and it seems like it could almost be hypnotic, I
Yeah.
guess.
So you're gonna go interview the pachinko
No,
guy?
no. I was talking about the founder of Sankyo.
Oh, which is the founder of the
Yeah.
company that makes the machines.
Yeah. So I'm just
I see.
profiling like Masayoshi Son, the founder of SoftBank.
Yep.
The founder of Unicharm, the founder of Suntory, or the
Okay,
CEO of
yeah.
Suntory, whatever. The honorary chairman of 7-Eleven.
Yep.
Unfortunately, passed away in March.
Oh, I didn't know that.
March 10th. He was 98 years old. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but I gave him a spot just out of respect.
Yeah, that's great.
Because I mean, look at 7-Eleven's success. It's insane, right?
They're everywhere.
I didn't even know they owned Denny's too.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Denny's and
Denny's
probably-
Japan, obviously,
Yeah.
not.
And I don't know about Denny's America, but
You
a lot of
talk
people.
about Denny's America, and people talk bad about it. And I had to. I was talking to somebody the other day. I was like, Denny's in Japan is great.
It's amazing, yeah.
It's really, really good service. It's
Yeah.
decent food. It's
Oh, yeah,
open
yeah.
24 hours. I didn't realize
Staff
7-Eleven
friendly. Yeah.
owned it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the Seven and I Holdings, I think it is Seven and I Holdings, and I like them because they have ATMs.
Yeah, it's
And
great.
when I first came back in 2014, and I had no Japanese income, I only had American income, but I needed money to do things in Japan. You can go to 7-Eleven with your American ATM card and just withdraw yen,
I do that
just like
all
that.
the time.
right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so,
It's cheaper, actually. I've done the math. It's cheaper than wiring money
and faster.
and
It's like
faster.
automatic.
It's like automatic. Yeah.
Right there.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible because Japan has all these anti-money laundering like laws and rules. But then the funny part is I hate to take us down this road, but then you have all these mom and pop like vegetable stands that only
Yeah.
take cash.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like, okay, well, who's checking them? And then, you have this complex banking system. So I run the two companies, right? And when I first started my first company, the Almata Global GK, which is here in Japan, you have to have an address, which
Yeah.
we have a share office. So we had to get a bank account. I can't go to any bank. I have to go to a bank that's closest to the physical address of the
Of the
of
office.
the office.
Ah.
And when you, when I went to the one bank, they were like, okay, we're 600 meters from your office, but there's another bank that's 600 meters from your office. Why did you choose us? I didn't know it was a thing, but clearly there's a law that says if you're going to open a business bank account, it has to be the bank branch that's closest to your office.
Wow.
So then I opened a second company, and I was going to go to the same bank. And they said, oh, I'm sorry, you already have a bank account with this other company through us. We can't open a second bank account, a business bank account, for money laundering reasons, apparently.
Okay.
So I had to go find another bank that's close by this other office. They have two separate addresses, but yeah, really crazy.
That's crazy.
I had to go there. And I don't even, most of the time we work from home or whatnot nowadays, right?
But I can go to 7-Eleven with my
bank card
card
and pull out cash and then inject that cash into my bank. And it's really invisible where I got the cash unless you have either the ATM slip or your other bank account in the United States shows that you pulled money out and that same amount of money went into the account.
Wow.
So I've had to do that too. Show them proof that is what I'm doing.
I've had situations where I had to send money to the States.
Yep.
And I got a phone call from the bank. And they spoke English. I mean, my name's on the account is definitely not Japanese. So they said, okay, what's the purpose? And then they ask you very directly, like, is this for terrorism purposes? Like, no. But they have to ask.
Right. I think I
AML.
should check the box.
Yep. They just got to check a little box. Okay, we asked him. He said no. Okay. Next customer.
Yeah.
And they probably make these phone calls all day long.
They were making that call to me for a while until it became a regular thing.
Yeah.
And then they said, "Is this a regular thing? You gonna get money from wired from this bank all the time?" And it's like, yeah, it's pretty. Then they stopped calling.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
They never stopped calling. Well, they stopped calling me because I started transferring money the other way.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if you get a phone call on your cell phone in Japan, it's usually spam.
Yeah.
So I just stopped answering the call.
Yeah.
If you know me, it's going to be on one of the apps or something.
That's right.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's Japan is like people use apps because they don't want to pay the fee for like making a phone call, right?
Right.
And then data is unlimited.
Sure. Yeah.
So if I use an app that uses data, I can just call people.
Yeah. All day long.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I think we pretty much covered it all. Oh, are hackers using AI?
Well, we just talked about that.
We did, didn't we?
Yeah. And I think there's going to be more of that, obviously. Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is, from my perspective, is scalability. Right? Like if you can scale the attacks, it's a numbers game, right?
Yeah.
So if you can, I mean, I think it's going to be used in different ways. One is, will I be able to generate successful spam emails or phishing attempts? And generate multiple emails that are targeting different types of people at scale. And then launching that. I mean, that's a very low-level type of use of AI probably with today's technology that we could do.
So this guy who says he found my uncle in some other country, and my uncle has $20 million he wants to wire to the U.S. for me, he's not just sending that to me, right? He's sending that email out to like thousands, maybe millions of people, right?
I mean, he could be targeting you.
That's true.
I would imagine that it's at scale.
Scale, yeah. Wow. Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, like, why waste all your time on one person who could say no?
Right.
When if you got like 50 people on the line at a time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and, there's the whole creating fake, WhatsApp and Facebook accounts and taking pictures. I've gotten asked by some people here in Japan, like, oh, I've met this girl online, and they showed me a picture, and she's from America, and she wants me to send her money, and you could tell them and this is probably some type of scam.
Hmm.
And they don't want to believe it. Yeah, they're older. But if you do like a reverse image search, you could probably find that
It's
person's
probably a
picture. Yeah.
probably a
I've
TikTok
found
model.
that person on doing just a simple image search.
Wow.
And it's like, oh, this came from a advertising campaign, and they just took the face and put it on a
See,
different body. And
I knew that, like, as a small channel, I know that, like, each like and each new subscriber is a big deal to me, especially on YouTube. And so I got a new follower, I want to say, on, was it Instagram or Facebook or something? And they started liking all my photos. I was like, wow, this person really likes my posts. So it was Instagram. It was Instagram. So, and I put Instagram on my YouTube. So like, hey, follow me here
Yeah.
too. I'll tell you when there's an update or whatever. We'll stay more engaged. This person started liking all my photos. And I was like, wow, they really like my photos. So I go to check the profile, and it says it was a person trying to look like a swimsuit model, and it says, I'm lonely, do you need a massage? That was the profile. I was like, oh man, like I wanted a real follower.
Right,
Like
yeah.
I wanted it to be somebody in London who's interested in Japanese culture. I didn't want it to, oh man. So I don't remember if I blocked him or whatever. I just like,
yeah,
it's like, I don't need that. Like,
there's so much of that.
yeah, it's
In
crazy.
this world, especially in your industry of social media. It's
Yeah, it's a bear trap, man. It's, yeah,
can't imagine that.
it's
The
crazy. Like,
landscape is nice.
nah, as a small creator, like, I can keep up with it, but if it gets any bigger, I won't be able to keep up with the
If it
comments
gets bigger,
and the
you'll have
likes.
people keeping up for you.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, eventually. I mean, I want to do my own like Instagram posts and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I'll give somebody like admin privileges, like to remove spam and respond to comments. In my voice. Sorry if you're listening to this in a couple years, you're probably not talking to me. But I like the Joe Rogan axiom of post and ghost. Just post something and close the app. Don't read comments about yourself. Don't get into conversations. It's just not worth it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I had a comment on a video I posted one time, and they're like something like, "Wow, your ego is really out of control. Do you think people want to listen to what you have to say?"
People are mean.
It's like, you took the time to write that.
People are really mean.
I just thought, oh man, you're so pathetic, and I just blocked them. Like, what? And it was somebody, I can't remember what I was talking about, but they're like, do you think you're such an expert that you need to make a video about this? I'm like, actually, I don't, but I wanted to learn about it, so I researched and made a video. Like, so I know it's not true. And maybe if I were younger or less secure or something, it would bother me. But I was like, wow, you really took the time to write that? Like,
Yeah.
I've heard several people say this, but I've never seen a hater who is better than the person they're criticizing.
Ah.
Right? I think
that's a
Michael
good
Jordan
statement.
said that. Like a critic who's like, dude, you missed that 3-point shot.
Right.
And it's like some fat guy sitting in the audience. Like,
Michael Jordan can say stuff like that.
he can get away with that. Yeah. Or Shaq or something like that. But it's like, it's usually some fat guy, in the 50th row, heckling him for missing one shot in the game. The guy who's like maybe played 6th grade C string basketball.
Yeah, and I don't think I could do it because of all of that craziness that comes with that. But I mean, I also think about people as individuals. You don't know what they're going through.
That's true.
You don't know if they just lost their job or girlfriend or lost a lot of money or
or they
what kind
be,
of problems that they're dealing with, and it's just an outlet.
Could
to
be
some
drunk
people.
posting too.
Could be, or purpose, or it could be a 10-year-old kid.
I know.
It's like,
what's that old meme? This is really old. Like on the internet, nobody has to know you're a cat.
so true. Try to spend your time doing positive things. And
yeah, that's the way
living
to
your
do
life,
it.
doing, maximizing value, and
That's the move.
doing good things, and I'm trying to be a more positive role model as a parent. So
Yeah.
I don't want my kids to kind of go back and be like, "Oh my God, Dad was on this podcast and he was saying some horrible stuff." I could be a horrible person too.
Nah.
Yeah. So
Nah. Well, I appreciate it.
I really appreciate it,
It's
Tracy.
been a good time, man.
Yeah, it was good.
Been a good time. I think we went for quite a while too. So.